Welcome back, Red Spotters. I'm Alexis Soto, joined by Mr. Peter Martinez, here with the podcast that brings you all of the latest stories coming out of the world of movies. And this week we've got a bunch of movies that come out, of course, none of which anybody saw, but hey, we did, and so we're going to talk about them. This week, our entire show will be devoted to discussing three films. That is The King's Man, brought to us by Matthew Vaughn, Nightmare Alley, the latest by Guillermo del Toro, and Matrix Ressurections from Lana Wachowski, the fourth installment in the Matrix saga. All of that here and more on Red Spotlight number 368. A couple of programming notes, of course. Our final show of the year is next episode, and we're going to be accompanied by Kyle Lira. Of course, we have our fingers crossed because he is prone to canceling on us literally at the last minute possible, but as things currently stand, Peter Martinez was finally able to flex his muscles a bit, and we are going to devote our final show of 2021 talking about our favorite movies of 2020.
I did it, guys. I saved the day.
You saved Christmas.
I saved Christmas. It's fantastic.
So that is something else, and at some point, either the first episode of the coming year or whatever, David and I will discuss our favorite television programs of the year 2021. And then as far as our favorite films of 2021 are concerned, well, I feel like it goes without say that is going to come at some point in the future. When, I cannot say. But yeah, that's where things currently stand. And without any further ado, let's go ahead and start off with our first film that we'll be discussing. That is The King's Man. Peter, would you kindly read the synopsis on Letterboxd, the place for films and select miniseries?
The King's Man. Directed by Matthew Vaughn. Witness the bloody origin. As a collection of history's worst tyrants and criminal masterminds gather to plot a war to wipe out millions, one man must race against time to stop them.
Okay. Starring?
Oh yeah, who's in this bitch? Ralph Fiennes, Gemma Arterton, Rhys Ifans, Matthew Bad, Tom Hollander, the only good Tom Hollander, Harris Dickinson, Daniel Bruhl, Jimon Hansu, Charles Dance, Aaron Taylor-Johns, Stanley Tucci, and I mean, let's leave it there. And directed, written, produced by Matthew Vaughn.
A couple of things, of course. It's pronounced either Ray Fiennes or Rafe Fiennes, not Ralph Fiennes. Just to be clear about that.
It's insane to me how you can't go a single episode without attacking my accent, but it's fine. You're just showing more of yourself in this.
Okay. So shall we go ahead and start off with our previous thoughts of this franchise so far? And that I referred to the previous Kingsman films that were both written and directed by Matthew Vaughn. We're talking about the original Kingsman, the Secret Service film that came out back in 2015, as well as Kingsman: The Golden Circle, which came out in 2017. Personally, I really, really, really loved the experience of Kingsman: The Secret Service for the first time. That was, to me, one of the biggest surprises when I saw it with a group of friends. To some extent, although it has come back as a inside joke amongst our group of friends, I didn't know it at the time, but I inadvertently and somewhat annoyingly introduced a close friend of ours to his, as of now, pronounced favorite movie of all time. this is an individual that, quite frankly, doesn't see many films. So I guess that would, that kind of speaks for itself. I think it's fair to say
he hates films.
He hates a lot of them. But for whatever reason, this spoke to him. And he has come, he only ever comes to see movies with us when it's a Kingsman movie. So he went to see Kingsman, the Golden Circle, with us. And he also accompanied us to see The Kingsman this past weekend. So that should tell you a lot about it. But genuinely, I thought the film was pretty stellar. Colin Firth was amazing, and Taron Egerton was a revelation. He since went on to star in Rocket Man, which I thought he was sensational in that, and was robbed of an Academy Award nomination. That was a real theft, I would say, in that regard. And I think what made, I don't know, it felt so fresh at the time. The action, in particular, the heightened action that Vaughn, provided, the direction overall was just, it's a really fun movie. The Golden Circle, I thought, was it's the kind of movie nowadays that I find myself appreciating, which is very messy, with redeeming qualities in there. But I would say that particular instance with the Golden Circle, all of the issues just sunk the film completely for me. I do not look back on that movie fondly in the least whatsoever. It was definitely one of my more disappointing theatrical experiences, if there ever was. And there have been several of them. So going into this, I really had very low expectations because I love the first one. I really disliked the second one. So that's kind of where my headspace was. I didn't really, and to be fair, the same can also be said of The Matrix. As far as initial reactions and reviews, I really just kind of ignored them because I felt like whatever was going to be said about them, I can already figure out the kind of things that would be said. And so as far as to what this film how it's being received, I don't know. Quite frankly, nobody saw it. It made $7 million at its opening weekend, a Kingsman film. So that goes to show you that everybody basically ignored it. So yeah, that's kind of my history with the franchise. Peter, how's your history with the franchise?
The Kingsman films are my favorite spy films, because they are the only ones that are allowed to be goofy.
I see.
Genuinely, these are goofy movies, and I love it. Because spy stuff, to be honest, can get boring. Because the story doesn't matter in spy stories. To a large extent, the characters don't matter in spy stories. It's more the action. It's the sights. It's the globetrotting. It's the gadgets. And modern spy films think they're too cool for school, and they don't just lean into the more fun stuff. So the gadgets are gone, basically, from modern spy films. The genuine weirdo gadgets gone. The action is good, but everything's about it looking realistic, right? And it's it's a spy movie. Let's have fun with it. And Kingsman is the only spy series where it's yeah, let's have fun. To me, I love the first one, easily the best one. Golden Circle is a classic case, I think, of sequelitis, where they tried to do a lot more and go a lot bigger, and it's the formula was perfect in the first one, and in the second one you tried to do too much and go too far, and it kind of fell apart. That being said, there's still a lot of cool shit that I like in it, and I can still very much have fun with that film. So yeah, that's where I am with it so far.
All right. What were your expectations for Kingsman?
The Kingsman, medium.
Did you hear any buzz going into this film?
No. Everyone was talking about Spider-Man.
Yeah. Okay. So, The Kingsman. For me, I would say, just based off memory alone, I would already say that this was an infinitely better film than The Golden Circle, because I don't feel like it fell into any of the traps that the second one did. And it was largely removed from any of the events that came before, because this is largely, and it is a prequel to how the Kingsmen basically began in this universe. So it's a standalone for the most part, and it's interesting. It is a prequel. I'm not necessarily overly fond of them, but it does navigate the terrain well enough to where I'm not groaning the entire time. At least to me, they didn't like over embellish themselves with the references or connecting it to the original films. So that was definitely a plus for me. I think Ralph Fiennes is a wonderful actor, and it was really, really refreshing to see him have a larger role in this film than I would have expected it to be. The same being with Djimon Hounsou. He is somebody that we've discussed that, as for years and years has had a lot of wonderful roles. Only, of course, the roles, or just about all of them that he takes in these big movies, ends up being the character that gets killed off, either almost instantly or eventually. So him having a large role in the film, I'm very happy for him. And it's just it does that thing that Kingsman does, right? Like it has a lot of fun, and we're dealing with a sort of play on, rather tremendous events in history. And when this is set place, it is the early 20th century, and it is basically the dawn of the Second World War, if I'm not or actually, no, the First World War.
There you go.
Yeah, that's the one I meant to say. So yeah, I actually had, for the most part, a great time seeing the film. There was a big aspect of it that kind of weighed it down, that was kind of frustrating on some level. Although, of course, it was definitely what Matthew Vaughn was intending, at least the message, if you will, or the overall theme of this film, necessarily speaking. I liked it. I liked it pretty good. I thought that for the most part, it was kind of in the same space for me. I don't feel like it ever really reached a point where, you would want films like these, like the first Kingsman, you would say, where you would feel kind of this like electric energy coming off of it. And at some points it was subdued, but it's interesting, right? Like, this is a really good movie, but it also, I don't know, I guess I'm just kind of tired of these, and I shouldn't feel tired. To be honest with you, I felt rather exhausted by that second one, and I'm just kind of really wanting Matthew Vaughn to move on, if I'm being honest with you. Because these movies are well made, but I don't know. I feel like this is the second movie in a row where nothing really substantial or interesting enough happens to warrant more of these. That isn't to say I don't want more of these movies, but then again, I know we had this fight when we talked about The Golden Circle, but doing this without Matthew Vaughn apparently is a cardinal sin. That being said, I'm not even sure Disney is interested in having more of these movies come out, considering how they buried this one entirely. So
they greenlit Kingsman 3.
That's happening?
Yeah.
Still? Okay.
I mean, they haven't shelved it yet.
Yeah, I'm tired, and I'm considering how these last two went. Again, I enjoyed Kingsman, and I'm sure I'll enjoy Kingsman 3 just fine. But I kind of, when I go into these kind of movies, I would like to enjoy these kind of movies more than just fine. I want something good. So yeah. That's where my thoughts are.
What's interesting?
Oh, real quick, I enjoy it because I particularly in a complete agreement, but I also love how it was utilized in the story, the anti-war message.
Oh yeah.
It didn't become a hindrance. In fact, it was definitely the point of the movie for the most part, and I thought it delivered that message really well. And I appreciate that because we need more anti-war voices, just period, because, they're always just drowned out with so much noise by all the corporate elitists that control this, the ruling class and everything. Continue.
This is a movie. It's weird because what hinders the film, I think, is that for most of it, it's not a Kingsman movie.
Yeah.
It's sort of this historical type film, right? Mm-hmm. To me, when it does the Kingsman thing, it does it incredibly well. And I feel the only issue I have with this film is I wish it would have pulled back and just been a Kingsman film.
Yeah.
Because when they're doing the spy shit, like when they go to Russia and all the shit with Rasputin, 10 out of 10. Love it.
Mm-hmm.
The third act, when they're doing spy shit, 10 out of 10. Love it. But so much of this film is sort of just justifying getting to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I get it. I do. But I get why he did it and why he wanted to do it. Because, yeah, he wanted to make sort of an anti-war film. But I think that, again, it held the film back. I think you probably should have just started the movie with his son dying. Right?
Spoilers!
Oh. No one saw it. Fuck them. Spoilers. Yeah, I think you should have started the movie with him.
Even less people saw this movie than West Side Story.
Oh, yeah. You all can go fuck yourselves then. I think it should have started with his son dying, and then him going like, "Okay, we need to make the Kingsman," and then boom, you have. It's like the first ever Kingsman mission, sort of thing, and then you can get on to all the stuff with Rasputin and all the smarmy evil villains from history, and them doing spy shit. Because when it was actually a Kingsman movie, I think it was really working for me.
Mm-hmm.
But when it wasn't, it's not that it was bad. It's just like it's not why I'm here, and it's I want this other thing, and you're giving me this, and it's not working out. Not that it's bad, it's just not the same, right? So it's like I really like Matthew Vaughn as a director. I think I really, really like him because even when he makes bad films, I like the films.
Can you quickly recap his entire all the films you've seen?
Yeah, I can do that. Because
I know I've seen the previous two Kingsman films. I've already expressed how I feel about that. X-Men First Class is a tremendous movie.
Sure. So, the original Kingsman, Kick-Ass, Layer Cake, Stardust, which I've recommended many times on here, and X-Men First Class.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, it's the Kingsman films. I feel like the only, and this might be a pointer too, the only bad films he's ever made are Kingsman films. All his other films are really, really good. From Stardust, Layer Cake, Kick-Ass, X-Men First Class. So yeah, maybe he's stuck around too long. Maybe he should have just made Kingsman and then moved on to something else. Like I said, I think he would be perfect for a Star Wars film.
Or Superman.
He would be great for Superman. And didn't he say
aren't we owed a great Superman film once this century?
In my lifetime, I hope. But no, he would. I think he would be perfect. I would say he's as perfect for Superman as what's his name seems to be perfect. Matt Reeves seems to be perfect for Batman.
Mm-hmm.
I really think he would knock it out a Superman film out of the park. But yeah, to me, both Kingsman 2 and Kingsman 3 are messy films. Definitely Kingsman 2, but they still have interesting filmmaking and interesting things going on where I can still enjoy them on a visceral level. Especially with Kingsman 3. Kingsman 3, I think, is a much better movie. It's just, it's more of a war movie.
Yeah.
But
I will give it this. For it being more of a war movie, where I would definitely think this has a leg up over actual war films that are made this day and age, like a Dunkirk or a 1917, it is grounded, at least for me, with, first of all, characters.
Yeah, that's
and then
true.
second of all, a message that a lot of movies in this genre don't want to address.
Yeah, most of those films are just like, oh, it's intense. Yeah, no shit, it's war.
It's reveling in the glory of war and everything, and there's not a hint of an anti-war message. Maybe there is off to the side, but it's not the focus of the film.
Maybe Warhorse.
Well, yeah.
But I
didn't include that movie in this.
I know.
I don't think of it as a war movie. It is a war movie.
It literally has a war in the title.
It's a horse. Yeah.
It's a horse movie more than a war film. No,
it was schmaltzy, Peter. It was. Remember when that movie came out? People were like attacking it for like, how dare you be sentimental? How dare you make me feel things?
I fucking saw it in theaters. Okay, I know.
10 years ago.
Yeah. I think the sort of not disdain, but sort of like indifference coming from this is that it's a war movie, and I think both me and you, kind of just don't care about war movies anymore.
You have to do something that, if you're going to do a war film, at least for me, you need to have something else going on that'll keep, like, you have to ground it in characters. My main issue with war films, for the most part, is they're all more or less the same. Like with 1917 or with Dunkirk, there's a gimmick attached to it, and that's the priority. That takes priority over any kind of characters. So yeah, like that's kind of where it is. And Hacksaw Ridge, I think, is an exception because there were characters, and you have great performances like Andrew Garfield.
Hacksaw Ridge was a Hallmark film.
I love Hallmark movies, though. It was the highest budgeted Hallmark film I've ever seen in my life. So there's that. I mean,
well, I guess the issue with this one is the thing it had going for it is that there's a Kingsman movie in there.
Yeah.
But that just bothers me because I just want the Kingsman movie instead. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So then
that is what you pay to see.
Yeah. So then it kind of evens out to where it's like, there's good stuff, but it's like, I mean, I really enjoyed watching the film. There's a lot going on. Yeah. And also, like, I love the history. I guess for me, I love the history stuff because a lot of it was like, obviously not the goofy supervillain stuff, but a lot of it is accurate to like what happened, like the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, kicking off a domino effect that plunged us into the First World War, the war to end all wars as they once dreamed, and the bullshit lineage of fucking royalty at the time, and there's a lot of stuff like that which they delve
if you're
into,
a history buff like you and I are, you're going to respond to this.
Yeah. And then also the anti-war stuff, which of course I ate up, but yeah, I almost wish he would have just what was that one-shot war film? Fucking
1917.
Yeah, I wish he would have made 1917. and then made the Kingsman with just being a Kingsman movie. Cuz yeah. That's the big. That's why I'm still hopeful for like a Kingsman 3. Because I think he worked out the kinks of making a Kingsman sequel. I think he realized, as George Lucas once said, I think he went a little too far in a few places with Kingsman 2. I think with Kingsman 3...
And to be clear, George Lucas said that himself about his own movie, The Phantom Menace.
Yeah, yes.
In a very infamous clip where, like, one of the first times he finished, like, the first rough cut of it, and he was like, I think I maybe went too far in some place.
It's a beautiful quote that I love using. I think he realized that with the sequel because, yeah, when it's a Kingsman movie here, it works. I think it works really well. You just have to, it's just, there's another movie attached to it, and that's what's kind of holding it back. With the Kingsman 3, from what I assume, there would not be another movie attached to it. It would just be Kingsman 3. So I still think he can cook up something good. But
real quick,
yeah,
they do leave some crumbs here to set up for a sequel to this movie, which was an interesting choice.
One of the craziest after credit scenes I've ever seen.
It is, but there is some, I don't know, do you feel like that movie's gonna get made?
No, not with the box office, no. Okay. I think the Kingsman 3 will probably be like the last Kingsman movie.
Right.
Which I'm fine with. And if a Superman comes his way beforehand, I'd rather him do that.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I enjoyed it. I know a lot of people walked away disappointed. I did not.
I was fine with it. I mean, it was more than I thought it was going to be. I thought we were going to have a mess here, and so I was quite happy with it. And it has some genuinely fun performances, like all of these films do. You have Matthew Good as our antagonist here, laying on a thick Scottish accent.
The thickness.
Tom Hollander did 3 performances as the 3 European royalty cousins throughout Russia, Germany, and England. Good to see him back and getting work. Jimon Hansu was great, of course. Charles Dance in minor roles. But really, I think one of the biggest surprises in this film was the character that is played here by Harris Dickinson, Conrad Oxford. As in, yes, Oxford's not rogues. They play with that as well. You're led to believe, as how the film and the marketing of it, very much mirrored that of the original Kingsman, that Conrad here was our lead. But a shocking twist actually does happen, and I have to say this was rather effective for a lot of reasons. But it was a wonderfully, it was a wonderfully filmed, shocking moment that definitely carried weight. But what was most shocking about it is that this is the character who you're, convinced is your main protagonist here, and he just dies right there at the end of the second act. And then the revelation is that Ralph Fiennes really is our main lead here. And that actually is refreshing to me, that there was a movie that was made in the year 2021, and I don't know how old Ralph Fiennes is now, like in his 50s, I would assume, and then he was able to lead a film like this. It's actually a pretty rare, honestly, of this scale and how much money went into it and the star power considering, all of this franchise. So that was kind of a surprise. And I genuinely do like him as an actor. I like him in anything he's in. And I really wish I'd seen more of him. Like, he was great in No Time to Die, but he was a very small part of that movie. Whereas here, this is basically, for all intents and purposes, his film. Yeah.
And no, I agree that end of second act, left turn it takes, which I spoiled for all of you, suck it, is really good.
Nobody saw it, like you said.
Yeah, no one saw it. It was your fault. No, that was really, really well done. And yeah, it's his movie, and I think he does great. He does the dad stuff great, the action, the drama, especially the action. He's up there, He could take on James Bond. He's really, really good. Maybe
he should be James Bond. Wouldn't that be something?
Becomes James Bond. Do it, you cowards. But no. It's really good. He's really good.
Yeah, and I also did one of the more effective, and it needed to be effective because it's kind of like what the film hinges on. The emotional crux is the relationship between him and his son Conrad, and this is the kind of relationship that has been seen before in various films. The son, very much coming of age, wants very much to be involved in this war because he feels it is an honorable thing to lay your life down, or to be willing to lay your life down for the sake of your country and your fellow countrymen. Whereas his father, very much, almost from the very beginning, I mean, honestly, that would be the character I would be. Very clearly, it's like, basically from the outset being, are you stupid or something? First of all, that is such a crazy thing to be okay with dying for. Second of all, you have no earthly idea what you are signing up for, you stupid boy. And maybe that came off a little personal, but that's how it definitely, like, he and all of the things that he was saying, Ralph Fiennes here, definitely resonated with me in terms of how I would respond to it. But that is the crux of the relationship. And Conrad is patient, but one way or the other. And this really, and I know this is inserting myself, and then this is projection, fine, but it's just like one of those things that happens sometimes when you're watching a film. This comes off, I think one of the best parts of the film was this whole sequence that happened in Russia, or at least with Rasputin. And they have successfully, they've completed their mission in assassinating him. He needed to be removed as an obstacle to make sure that Britain does not get overwhelmed in this conflict. And man, that was a choice, really. They're on their way back. They're celebrating his birthday. And then he decides to ask, once again, knowing what his father is going to say for his blessing to enlist. And then he ends up saying, you know what? I mean, I'm sorry. I don't need your permission anymore. I can go ahead and waste my life away, which is exactly what he ended up doing. At that point, I'm sorry. I really do try. I don't think I'm one that in most movies, I have a hard time empathizing with characters. No, I have a relatively easy time with it, but this one was a beauty. This one really tested the limits of how much I could really care. Or at least, I feel like to me, that was the moment he signed his life away. Like, all right, fine. You deserve what's coming to you. And even what happened to him, which was wonderfully filmed, and for so many reasons, even then it was like, what a stupid way to die. But I mean, that's war, right?
I think that's why it worked, because it was so stupid.
Yeah.
Right? Like what a fucking waste. And it catches you off guard. Because at that point you think like, okay, I thought eventually the dad would take him under his arm. Like when he showed him the whole secret agent thing, I thought like, okay, now we're doing the secret agent thing.
This is a way for you to feel as if you're being put to use and you have a purpose of some sort, because that's clearly what Conrad was missing. Mm-hmm. And what kind of and I'm not sure, I know Matthew Vaughn was trying to do something else with it, but for me, it's like you have something right there that you could do, mm-hmm. but instead you walk away and you choose a path that leads you where you're going to go, which is death.
Yeah, I think he was more interested in the anti-war film.
Yes.
Than the Kingsman film.
That's why. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what happened. Which I get, mm-hmm. but it ends up muddling the experience, I think. But I still enjoyed it. I thought there was some good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. We have, Daniel Bruhl is in this, which in some ways is kind of a missed opportunity because we're not going to see him in that character again. But Daniel Bruhl is such a great actor, and he does these kind of roles really well. So that's disappointing. I guess he'll be a Bond villain at some point.
He'll he has be that Marvel.
Look. Oh, well, whenever. Oh, that's right. That's coming up. Yeah. I guess to me, even though the film is, I like the film, and I'm, very much lukewarm on it overall, though, because I kind of wanted something else. That's mm-hmm. true. I'm also kind of tired of this. But I am saddened to hear how this really, no one gave a fuck about this movie. Which, I mean, speaking of not giving a fuck, we've got other films to talk about. So I think
speaking of not giving a fuck, Nightmare Alley.
Yeah, that's all I have to say about this movie.
All right. You ready to go to our second movie of our trilogy tonight?
Yep.
The next film is Nightmare Alley, directed by Guillermo del Toro. Man or Beast? An ambitious young carny with a talent for manipulating people with a few well-chosen words hooks up with a female psychiatrist who is even more dangerous than he is. Starring Bradley Cooper, Kate Blanchett, Rooney Mara, Toni Collette, Willem Dafoe, Richard Jenkins, Ron Perlman, Mary Steenburgen,
David Strathairn,
Yes, that is also another name. Holt McCallany, Mark Pivinelli, and Jim Beaver. Because I ended with that because I like his name. Directed by Guillermo del Toro, written by Guillermo del Toro, and produced by Guillermo del Toro. I'm not sure, but I think all three movies we're going to talk to tonight are written, directed, and produced by the same person.
Wachowski has a writing credit in Matrix, but she didn't solely write the movie.
Well, yeah, but neither did any of the other ones.
No, they didn't?
No.
Oh, okay, then. You're correct what you're saying.
Everyone's got to have a writing partner. Just to, Yeah, he had a writing. Kim Morgan, his wife.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, remember? That was a whole thing. So yeah, man or beast. That could be the tagline for every fucking Guillermo del Toro movie film ever.
So, for longtime listeners, it is no secret that Peter and I are huge fans of this man and his movies. We did a whole series late last year, recapping the entire filmography of Guillermo del Toro, from Kronos all the way to The Shape of Water. And I'm interested. Did you ever do that letterbox list of Del Toro films ranked? Because I'm sure made one here somewhere.
I'm sure you did.
Yeah, I have it right here. I like all of his movies. The ones, there are two that are, I don't really care at all for Mimic, mainly because, the only thing that's really his in that movie are the creatures, which, congratulations, but that movie made me want to vomit. It was so disgusting.
Isn't that great?
But and then Crimson Peak it's such a shame because there's a lot of beautiful things in that movie, but I just don't care. Here's where I'm at right now with the Del Toro movies. I would say the 10 films that he's directed, at number 10 I have Crimson Peak, at number 9 I have Mimic, at number 8 I have I need to update this. This is maybe in a different order. I'll just say forget about the list. But I love I love all of these movies. My three favorite films of his. I'll go with top 3: Hellboy 2, The Shape of Water, and Pan's Labyrinth.
All right.
I'll go with those as my top 3. Do you have a top 3?
I mean, I know for sure Pan's Labyrinth is in my top 10 of favorite films ever.
Mm-hmm.
Like ever.
So that probably should be your favorite Del Toro film.
It is probably favorite Del Toro. After that, it becomes probably Hellboy 2. I really like Hellboy 2. And this is I think The Devil's Backbone.
Yeah,
I actually really like The Devil's Backbone.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that would be the ones.
Del Toro, we went into great length in talking about him and how he is as a filmmaker. Please do, if you're interested, look up our episodes on him. But in many ways, like he may be the single most interesting person to listen to talk about movies and film. Like any interview he does, like I probably need to look up some interviews that he's done with this movie, because just hearing him talk about films is just so invigorating. And and a lot of the things that he says, quite frankly, one of the things that really stuck with me was in our final Del Toro episode, which was dropped in January because it was a holdover. There was this long quote of Del Toro's. And in that quote, he spoke about how, the history of film and filmmaking is not necessarily in a bright spot when audiences can no longer really understand how to read or connect with cinema, with films. And that is a thing that we have encountered really for a long time now, but I feel like 2021, especially, there have been some eye-opening moments that really have vindicated that point of view, where people, by and large, just can't read movies anymore. And that really comes across as a condescending thing to say and very elitist. But regardless if those things feel that way or come across that way, it doesn't make it any less true. I feel like when it comes to where things are with film, and at least this is how, films should be revered and made, I feel like he has kind of the keys to that, quite frankly. And you see his heart and he calls himself a humanist. You see all that throughout his movies. He is one of my favorite directors. I love his films. And I feel like, I don't know if you want to add anything more to that, Peter, but I feel like that's kind of, with his name, it carries a lot of expectations. And at least with me, the initial reactions to Nightmare Alley weren't overwhelmingly positive, which, to be fair, I don't know if most of his movies have been praised with overwhelmingly. I'm looking at his movies right now, the whole 10 of them, and I can definitely remember that there were some not so nice things said a lot about him, but I was afraid, at least for me, that we were going to walk into a Crimson Peak situation, which, Crimson Peak is nice to look at, but it's just that. It's nice to look at least for me.
Yeah, Crimson Peak, it might be my least favorite of his films, just because, to me, there's just not much going on with that film. I get it, but it's really whatever to me. And yeah, I did get somewhat worried with that, because when it comes to his dramas, his Spanish-speaking films have always been better.
Yes.
And The Shape of Water was kind of the first one where it's like, where his English drama kind of popped out and was pretty good. So I was a bit,
Won Best Picture, Best Director.
Best Picture, Best Director, Best Sex Scene, all of it. It was a tad bit worrying going in, just like, okay, well, what is this? Especially because there was no hype. Yeah. And it's like, it's a Guillermo del Toro film. Why is there no hype? But then
it's also opening against Spider-Man.
Yeah, well, when you remember it's just the death of film, like, oh, okay, I get it. But yeah, no, we went in, we watched it. We decided to get a private screening because we didn't want anyone bothering us while we watched Nightmare Alley. And I ended up enjoying the hell out of it. I think it's really, really good. I think it is masterfully put together. It's a film, if it was released, especially, it feels like a much older film. It feels like a Best Picture winner from years ago. That's the way it kind of comes off to me. And yeah,
technically speaking, it is a remake. Although not really, but sure. There's an older movie with the same...
From like the 1940s, I think.
Yes. Which, ironically enough, is when this film takes place.
Well, yeah, it was a book originally. I think it was a book that released in 1946. And then it was made into a movie a year later. Hollywood's always had quick turnaround. So yeah, no, I came out really loving it and going like, yeah, no, this is... another Del Toro masterpiece in my eyes.
To address what you said there about like booking a private screening, in all actuality, that's not what happened. It became an accidental private screening because nobody else was interested in seeing the movie. To which I bring you one of the best tweets in the last week by The Moral Vision. This one really made me laugh, which was, "Stay safe out there, folks. If needed, you can isolate at any showing of Nightmare Alley."
Yeah. So how did you feel?
So I saw it twice.
That's true. That's a good sign.
I feel like it's a really good sign. I saw it twice. The second time, nobody else but me. So again, just winning all around with Nightmare Alley. No, man, I agree with you. This is kind of a masterpiece. I fucking love this movie. I think it is easily one of the best movies of the year. And by the way, we've had some really, really, really good movies this year. And I am going to be fighting to put this in my top 10 of the year because, quite frankly, there are too many movies to put into a top 10 that I love already in 2021. But no, this was amazing. And then this is like the complete opposite of what Crimson Peak was, at least for me. Look, this is, I think, undoubtedly the most beautiful looking movie that has come out this year. If this doesn't end up winning Best Cinematography, which they could give it to Dune, and Dune looks amazing, so I wouldn't be mad if Dune would win either. Yeah. But fuck, Nightmare Alley. This looks like a classic movie. This is a movie. Mm-hmm. Like, this is something that was kind of a revelation because
it's something you go to the picture show to see.
Exactly. Exactly, man. The performances, I feel, speak for themselves, but they're towering. They're amazing. The craft on display, the costumes, the production design especially. And it also helps that it is a cleverly and brilliantly written movie with a wonderful, I mean, and I think I think it says a lot about a film that has such a ghoulish protagonist, but you love the man's performance. You love Bradley Cooper's performance in this. I think this is one of my favorite performances of his. He is going to get a Best Actor nomination, so I am glad to hear that his name is in the running for that. But it says a lot about having a ghoulish, if not odious, protagonist in this. But that is the point, and the ending. The ending. But every part about that. The thing about this film is, it is technically, and I don't remember. Maybe you can look it up there on Letterboxd. Maybe it says exactly how long the runtime of this movie is. I believe it was in the realm of 2.5?
Yeah, 2.5.
Like 2.5 hours. It's a long film. It didn't feel long to me at all. Man, I'm sorry. This movie just like, if it kind of flew by because of how in it I was. I loved all of the different stages of the film where we move from like location to location. I love the journey with these characters. Yeah, I don't know how many times I can say I love it, but this is a phenomenal movie. It's one of the best movies of the year. And I think, considering how great it is deeply depressing on every level imaginable how Disney really threw this movie under the bus. And even if they had released it in the optimal time, I don't know if there is an optimal time anymore for a movie like this, because nobody cares, and nobody cared to see this. So yeah, it's one of the best made movies in a long time, in a year filled with really wonderfully made films. And it is easily, I think right now, yeah, I would probably qualify it as like one of my favorite Del Toro films. I saw it twice. Even got some posters that were there.
Yes.
And you have one now.
Yes. It was
and an amazing poster too.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Very good poster. And those are rare these days.
The writing, the score by Nathan Johnson, who did the score for Knives Out. I don't know if you caught that. Beautiful, beautiful music on here. Bradley Cooper is amazing. Cate Blanchett eats the scenery. Willem Dafoe, even like minor roles we have here with David Strathairn and Richard Jenkins. Toni Collette, of course. It's like, I don't know, man. It's just, I guess this is what Scorsese said is cinema. Yeah, and this is a fucking amazing movie.
That ending, again, I feel like if it came out 2 decades ago, it would be like a classic movie moment that's like referenced and parodied all the time.
Because 2 decades ago, films like these were king at the box office. These people actually went to go see them.
These were the movies that made the money. Like
it would be ingrained in the pop culture zeitgeist. Mm-hmm. Where people would remember these moments.
Not anymore.
No. Those are reserved for Marvel films only.
Those are reserved for portal scenes only. Let's be real.
God damn.
I think the whole multiverse stuff has quickened my hatred of that like nostalgia shit. That just like it's such an easy button to push to get the dopamine flowing in people's brains, and then they.
Which, I mean, in large part was one of the reasons for why we were dreading the fact that this multiverse was becoming the next big gimmick by Marvel, because we knew this was going to happen one way or the other. And guess what? It ended up happening. There's a tweet I want to pull up here that really speaks to what you're talking about here. And I felt every word of this. This comes to us by Houston Coley. He's a great guy on film Twitter. He has a lot of wonderful takes. Please follow him. It's at BlockbustedPod. And he was quote tweeting by some person named Matt Ramos. I can't really, I don't know who this person is, but let me just read what Matt Ramos posted, which is, I believe, what you were referring to. And he has a image here of Chris Evans as the Human Torch from the Fantastic Four films.
Oh no,
and
that's okay.
That's the one. And he says, imagine a quote-unquote Portals-like moment in Multiverse of Madness where all of the most nostalgic Marvel heroes, not named Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., are coming through.
Well, he said
and
most
then
nostalgic.
Yeah, I know. And then one portal opens and Chris Evans walks through and everyone thinks it's Cap, but he says 2 words, flame on. His clothes burn to reveal the Fantastic Four suit. This was not a parody. This was an actual, this person meant what he said here in all seriousness. And then Houston quote tweeted that saying, vapid stuff like this is becoming the only emotional currency audiences understand or want. And it's exactly, in this case he was referring to the other movie we'll be discussing, what Matrix Resurrections is about.
Yeah, because it's getting to the point where, first of all, no one talks about those old Fantastic Four movies. No one has fond memories of them. No one has ever thought about Chris Evans being the what's his name, Johnny
Human
Storm,
Torch.
Human Torch, since the last time the second movie premiered. Like, no one thinks about it. No one cares. The only reason people would get excited is just for the idea of something nostalgic, because it's not actually nostalgic, because again, people don't actually care. I bet you, I don't know the person who tweeted that, but I bet you he doesn't actually care about those films or the idea of Chris Evans playing that character again. But it's just the fact that it provides the opportunity for the audience to point and go, look, I know that. I remember that. It doesn't matter whether you have positive or negative feelings. It's just to say, I remember that.
Right.
It's so weird. So fucking weird. And yeah, I'm kind of worried that Spider-Man made so much money. Like, this is going to be a thing now. And I don't want it.
It's already made $1.1 billion in the pandemic.
I don't want it. I feel, oh my god. WB better not try to throw Batman together. Like, oh, all the Batman. I would hate that. That fucking sucks. Because as much as I enjoyed
the movie No Way Home.
Spider-Man No Way Home, you know what I'm going to enjoy a hell of a lot more? The Batman. Which, guess what? It's still a superhero film based on a character we've seen a million times, but it's not connected to anything, and it's a very much a director-driven film.
Yeah.
And if you can't give me original blockbusters, the least you can do is that. The least.
You know, there were a lot of... There's so many wonderful movies that have come out, you know, this last month especially. There are so many lingering feelings of, like, you know, wonderful shots. I'm not sure if I ever mentioned in West Side Story that beautiful shot of Ansel Elgort in a puddle and the reflection coming through.
Yeah, I remember that.
Oh my god, how beautiful. But similarly, I love how in Nightmare Alley it opens up with, you know, his name is Stanton, or Stan, at his house. The first scene is he burns it to the ground and he leaves that life behind. I believe that was communicated very clearly. But oh my God, those flames in the house was like so picturesque. That's like it's staring at a painting, how beautiful it looked.
And that's such a it was such a fantastic way to open the story. No dialogue.
No.
Especially from the main character for so long. You just see him burn a body and leave the home. And then you...
By the way, the first time I saw it, I didn't realize that was a body.
Oh, you did it?
No.
Yeah, because it very much looked like a body. Oh, okay, so you did not have that info.
No, I didn't at all. So like the second time was like, that was a body bag the whole time? I didn't see that the first time.
Because to me, I loved how the movie just starts with telling you this isn't a great guy.
No.
And then the story just slowly unravels from there. But yeah, like, that's so great. So good. I'm so glad we could get a private screening.
It wasn't terribly difficult to arrange, I will say that. But yeah. So, shall we talk about Stan here and Bradley Cooper's performance of it all? Because we have a wonderful arc here. It honestly is one of the most... to me, the best way to sum it up is, I don't know, cosmic justice. But basically, who Stan is today the people we refer to as Ben Shapiro, Candace Owens, all the professional grifters out there. Because this movie is about grifting, and the main character is a grifter. So I really do wonder if Del Toro, reached out to Candace Owens to get her expertise and how if this was like really portrayed with as much respect as their craft
they don't
allows.
The thing is, back then it was a fucking art. Okay,
yeah,
the way they would pull people apart and just work them. Now it's just like you just lie to your face, like, no, the sky's red, it's not blue. And if you disagree, you're an elite pedophile. Well, I don't want to be an elite pedophile. I guess you're right. I guess the sky is red. Like, that's how it is now. There's no finesse to it. There's no style.
So we have here Stan. He stumbles upon carnies and this traveling carnival. This is in the 40s.
By the way, the production value for that carnival a little bit higher than it should have been. I don't give a fuck. It was beautiful, but it was just funny where it's like, damn, can Disney do this?
Well, Disney wasn't a thing in the 40s, so no, that's the answer to your question. What's really interesting is like a lot of this film deals with carnies and carnivals and a lot of, their stagecraft, their art, or I guess their artistry, if you want to put it that way, and how they're able to con people into a lot of, the amusements they have at their attractions. What's really fascinating is a lot, if not all of it, as far as what we see here and how the carnies really do wool one over basically all of their customers, is rooted in fact. Like, all of this basically did happen. And it's really shocking to see some of the things that are on display here, just as a commentary in and of itself. It really is. Like,
shit was ruthless.
Overtly illegal activity, I want to stress, that was just common practice here. And I don't know what was worse, that or the fact that people were so gullible or dumb enough to believe anything they saw. I mean, I can believe that, quite frankly, because we see it today in our day and age, how gullible and idiotic people can be. Anybody tells them something, as you say, they still are, they're still fooled here. But then it's like, whoa, you guys... I'm glad I don't live in that era, because that's a whole different generation of stupid. A lot of the things that they believed, but then again, it also speaks to how good of a con man all these people were. Like, they committed to their roles, and you see a lot of the art behind that, especially with Stan here. How he really, and it's interesting. Like, this again, like you say, the film begins, and off the bat, we know this ain't a good guy. It's also really hilarious to see, like, he kind of has like this emotional moment where, like, I think I finally found my calling. I'm going to lie to people for a living, and I'm going to rip them off.
Yeah, but then you also see how just brutal the time period is. And you're like... It's I see where the phrase "it's a dog eat dog world" came from, because
like the stuff, especially with the geek.
oh my god, that's hellish.
So can you explain for those that didn't see it? Because most people didn't see. So this whole geek situation.
A geek, and I guess it was a real thing back in the day in these
Hard to believe, right?
traveling carnivals, is an individual who would bite the head off a living chicken. And that was just one of the shows. And it was called A Geek, Being a Geek. And they within about the first half of the film, they show that they basically keep the geeks like slaves in there working for them, but they get them to become geeks by finding the most pathetic drunk at the lowest point of their life, getting them hooked on opium through their liquor, and just sort of from there, just like now they're forever yours, basically.
It's implied not so subtly by Willem Dafoe's character that a lot of these were World War I vets that were falling on hard times.
Yeah, for sure.
They lure them in with the promise of temporary work, but with alcohol, and they spike the alcohol with opioids, as you say. And they go through a process where they force them to go through withdrawals and, get them to think about the panic of what that would look like. And then sooner or later, they become enslaved. It's like, I didn't know this was a thing. And this is utterly horrifying to think this actually happened.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa. Like, geez, man. So, that was definitely something, right? In the carnival, we have Willem Dafoe, who is the ringleader. Oh my God. That man knows how to eat scenery like nothing. Any movie he's in, which he does a lot of movies, he commits so effortlessly, and you just buy it whatever he does. You also have there Ron Perlman, which you have to have Ron Perlman in a Guillermo del Toro film. Come on.
What are you going to do, not have him in it? Come on. Come on. Don't be ridiculous.
And then you also have Toni Collette and David Strathairn, and their specialty is, well, I'm not sure if the act that they're currently doing. So I believe it's Madame Zena, who is Toni Collette's character, and she's basically like this the woman with a crystal ball that can see into the future. And so they have this really wonderful sequence where all the audience around are, putting in their questions to test out if her ability to be a psychic is actually real. And then you also see the behind the scenes trickery of it, where you actually have David Strathairn underground or beneath the platform, basically feeding her the information that she needs to really engage with the whole act and everything. But they come into a far more substantial standpoint with, like, they're the ones that really begin to not sway, but really convince, not directly, but just by the fact that Stan really loves this kind of stuff. That's what he wants to do with his life. And so he becomes inspired. He also has this infatuation with Rooney Mara's character. And he really is combining the two of them to see bigger acts and to include her and to impress her and win her over. He also gets under the wing of David Strathairn, who he wants to know more about mentalism. That's a trick that is something that he wants to know more about, but it involves a lot of, well, I don't know, maybe you can explain it better, but because I'm having a hard time finding the words for this, but David Strathairn very clearly doesn't want to unfold all of those secrets because he himself stopped engaging in the act because of how it was fucking him up. And the warning that he gave was, the more you engage with this, the more you begin to believe your own lies.
Yeah.
So that's the whole first part of that movie. And what are your thoughts on that first whole act and all of these different people?
What's crazy is this film almost feels like two different movies. right? Because you have the first part at the
carnival,
right? And that's the part you kind of broke down, and that's great. Like it's this really interesting, slow moving carnival film, and you sort of learn about everyone that lives there, how the place is run, while you're following our main character, where there's this underlying level of.
Can I say real quick? Mm-hmm. Think of A Bug's Life. Did David Strathairn and Toni Collette remind you of two somebodies in the traveling bug circus, or did all of these people remind you of that? On some of these characters, because there's the couple, there's the praying mantis and the butterfly couple. Yeah. That's who they reminded me of exactly when I was watching the movie. Bug's Life is a great film. People forget about that movie. Go watch A Bug's Life. It's on Disney Plus. Sorry, I just couldn't resist.
No. They do remind me of them, which is pretty funny. But what's great is that beginning where you do see he's a murderer and then sets a house on fire, because throughout definitely this first half, but then especially the second half, there's just this underlying sense of dread.
There's an underlying sense of dread. That is true. It clearly was communicated to you that we're supposed to already know he was a murderer. Mm-hmm. I don't know if maybe do you feel like it could also be read that he's burning a body, but he wasn't the one that killed him?
Well, that's the thing. You don't know, right? So there's this underlying thing of like mystery and like, who is this person that we're following? Because you really don't know, right? Like you start there and he says next to nothing for the first 10 to 20 minutes of the film.
Very reserved.
And it's not until the second half where he starts going. But that's at the point where you start to uncover the layers to who this character is. Is he man or beast? Which, I mean, every Del Toro film is basically about that. And Del Toro's answer is always, the man is the beast. And the beast is the human, so to speak. And here he just cuts out the middleman and you follow, because he loves monsters, and I think this film was about his favorite monster, man basically, or actually I should say his least favorite monster. So but I really love that first part. It's definitely slow. I think a lot of people maybe like the second part because it really picks up and there's a lot of really interesting stuff. And in the second part, it's really tense because at that point, shit is going to go bad. Yeah. And I think even, again, because we were in a private screening, so I could do it, I started going like, oh, God, no, don't do it. Once we started hitting to that third act, because I'm just like, fuck, this is going to go bad. Yeah. But within that first act, it's a lot slower, and it's really so well put together. And it's some of the most beautiful shots, right? Like,
oh, yeah.
Because Guillermo del Toro, he's like, oh my God, the carnival. I'm going to capture the carnival in all its glory. And he really does.
Now, you say slow, and I know you and I very much differ when we use that word when it comes to most people. But when you say slow, yes, it is. I don't automatically view slow as being bad, and neither do you. No, yeah. I love a slow pace. I love a slow moving pace, as long as there's like purpose to everything, and there's enough going on in every moment of this movie where I feel like my time is not at all being wasted. As with all of his films, it is in service of this character and in service of overall what this film is trying to accomplish. But I also wanted to clarify, because people, when they hear slow, they automatically think that that's a bad aspect of the film. No. I didn't view it as that way whatsoever. The pacing to me, I thought, was perfect because I was sucked in all the way through. Yes, it picks up considerably in the second act because so much happens in that second act. It's kind of like a ticking bomb, this movie. And there's a big explosion of fireworks, shall we say, once we hit where we're going to. But yeah, we have some interesting sequences along the way. This is, I don't know, I guess, they wanted to set up that, I don't know, Toni Collette's horny. You know, she in the bathtub. Carnies. Well, yeah, they are. But like Bradley Cooper is looking very good, by the way, in a bathtub. and then she does something that a lot of people wish they could do with him. And then moving past that,
I think we're just getting insight to your fantasies here.
He looked pretty good. I'll just say that. This is I don't even know how old he is at this point, but
I don't either. You know what? He looked real fucking old in You're the Star. What's it called? A
Star Is Born.
A Star Is Born.
Yeah, he really did.
But I think
and American Sniper.
But I think that I guess it seems like that was just him looking like a fucking shit for the role.
Maybe
because he's supposed to look like someone who's an alcoholic, full of just he's supposed to look fucking terrible. But I don't know. He seems a lot, unless some digital trickery. I don't know. But he seems a lot younger. He looks a lot younger in this film than A Star Is Born, which I think was the last thing I saw him in. But but you also saw him in Licorice Pizza, which I have not seen yet.
Yes, we will see that soon, hopefully. And he looks definitely older in Licorice Pizza too, because he's wearing a lot of makeup. He's got a wig and everything and a beard. So, but he's also great fun in that film. He's a very dynamic actor. I like practically anytime he's in a movie, I really enjoy his performance. Even films that I don't like American Sniper, have problems with.
Yeah.
But he's great in it. I know you don't care very much, but I really like David O. Russell's American Hustle. Oh, and Silver Linings Playbook I especially love, and he was great in that movie too. I forget what else he's been in, but those are a lot of really great roles. He's a long ways away from the days of The Hangover. That's for sure. So yeah, that's definitely there. But then it's also established, of course, we have Rooney Mara. I don't see very much of Rooney Mara. I don't know how many movies I saw her in Carol from a few years ago.
In more indie flicks.
Yeah. So Carol with Cate Blanchett, which was very good. I don't know if you ever saw that movie.
Which is funny because here she's like, that stone-faced bitch. And it's like, oh, you weren't saying that in Carol.
Nope. But they do form an attraction. And the second time I saw it, I was like, you know what? I buy these two. Like, I buy the infatuation. Of course, I feel like even from the original screening, it's just not going to last.
Yeah.
One way or the other, it's just not going to.
I was pretty afraid for Rooney Mara's character.
I definitely, I was. But until we get to that second act, I was like, yeah, I don't know how long you're going to last, girl.
Yeah.
Couple of key moments that happen throughout this first act, though. David Strathairn dies. And I was really trying to piece together when this happened. If this was intentional or it was an accident.
Yeah.
Right?
I had assumed it was an accident. But I maybe I need to watch it again.
I think it was, though.
Okay.
The second time I saw the film, I landed firmly. It was an accident, because how David Strathairn dies is, he's an alcoholic and he likes to, indulge in, his fair share of drinks, and he asked Stan to go get him one, and he goes to Willem Dafoe's bunker, if you will, of all this alcoholic stuff. But there was a whole key sequence before the fact where there are two different boxes filled with alcohol, two different kinds of alcohol, the drinking alcohol that people like,
and they put them right next to each other.
I know. But that scene was supposed to tell us that this was a thing, but then also for Stan to recognize the difference between the two. And I guess it ended up being that he either forgot which was which and grabbed one that eventually ended up killing Pete, as they call him. That's David Strathairn's character.
See, I think because they so ridiculously put them so close together, and almost intentionally made it confusing. Like, here's two crates. This here in this crate is some of the best alcohol you'll ever have, and this other crate is poison. They look very similar. Why would you do that? I don't know. Again, if there's a negative, that's really fucking stupid. But to me, I thought they were going to ridiculous lengths to go like, okay, an accident's gonna happen, right? Because to me, like that would be it. If they had put the crate like farther away and been like, okay, right here, this is the good alcohol, and under there, under that desk, that's the poison, you know.
They were pretty clearly telegraphing that was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
There was even this key shot where after that sequence, Stan goes back to Xena's place with the crate of alcohol. And the camera pans to that crate as Stan is putting it on the floor. So the film is telegraphing ahead of time. You know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. But so to me, it always came off like, okay, this is supposed to be an accident.
Yeah. And then the police almost discover the entire, almost arrest them because they suspect of bad things happening. But here really is not the birth, but I guess the culmination of how much he's learned, really, as far as being a grifter. Because, wow, does Stan lay it on thick, and he plays this poor guy like a fiddle. He just steps into the action to where he's able to really fool this sheriff into thinking that, you know, through mentalism, that he is in contact with the dead, in particular with his dead mother, whose name was Mary. That was some kind of, well, I don't even know what to say at this point, but that was something to see. And through that, Rooney Mara's character becomes convinced, okay, you're ready. I'm ready to be with you. Let's go. And they leave.
Yeah. And then the whole basically second half of the movie gets started.
And we fast forward 2 years, and they're doing shows. Their mentalism act is a success. That first scene, where they're in the big room where the show is happening.
Mm-hmm. You
have Bradley Cooper with the blindfold, and he's, guessing the items that, Rooney Mara is holding for the audience to, that's the whole act and everything. Oh my God, that whole sequence is just beautiful. That, the camera, the lighting, the staging, it's just like, that's one of the best shot sequences I've seen ever. It's just so good. It's like, it's moments like that just like make me stop and like, can we just pause the movie right here? Can I yell at the protection guy? Can you just stop the movie so I can like take this in? Because this is so good.
Well, it was a private screening. Maybe we could
have maybe, yeah. But the big part here is we're introduced to Dr. Lilith something, I believe. This is Cate Blanchett. By the way, I'm a big fan of Cate Blanchett because she's one of those actors that literally just walks into any movie and makes it hers.
Oh yeah.
And she just commands attention like nobody's business. Maybe because she has like, I don't know if it's like to you, but she has this look of like an old-fashioned movie star. In many ways, I always wondered maybe she could have played Lucille Ball in a movie. Not Nicole Kidman, but I mean, we both like Nicole Kidman, at least her performance. But here, she, basically jumps into the movie trying to unmask the sham that is Stan. And again, you also see how much he's grown in his grifting. He's able to just like, on his feet, throw all of the accusations back at her. And then while he's at it, punch her down a couple of pegs as well. That was brutal.
Well, he probably shouldn't have.
No, he basically signed his death warrant there, I would say.
Yeah, no, that whole sequence was fucking great. Really, really good. And it also, that's where you begin to see what was foreshadowed earlier, where it's like, it's going to his head.
Yeah.
His mentalist abilities. He thinks he's the smartest man in every room.
You also see what's changed. He's become overtly dismissive of his wife, Rooney Mara. He ignores her downright. And you see the divergence. Whereas with Xena, she would tell the truth to the people she conned that it was all an act. He refuses to do that, and he kept it going. He kept the act going for these people that wanted private audiences with him, because of course, like he claims to commune with the dead. You have these rich people who would go to his shows, and they want more for themselves. They want more access with the great beyond, and that goes down a rabbit hole that is his undoing for all of those reasons and more. There's a lot of really great details. Let me ask you this. At what point, because there's a wonderful twist that happens here with Cate Blanchett, because they become quite close together. He begins to form at least romantic feelings to her through their unholy alliance to scam everybody. At what point did you figure out what she was really doing here? Because there's a turn that happens where it's like, oh, you dirty bitch, but you're amazing. The way she played him
sure
like
you
a
fell in love.
fiddle. Oh my God.
It was a very Cersei moment. It's from the beginning, I knew like she's not working with him. Because the way she enters the film, it's so the film almost screams at you, she's trouble.
Yeah.
Like just from the first shot of her.
She's trouble to the main character in this story.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically.
Yes. And so, yeah, I always knew that there was going to be another shoe to drop with her. What it was, I don't know, right? But I knew there would be more. But what did drop was pretty fucking funny. At least to me.
It was so good because there were these two rich guys, right, that she basically introduced him to. And the first one was a judge. And, well, I mean, let's just get to the point with that one. That one ends with the wife killing him and herself in a murder-suicide. Yeah. Because he told them that they would be reunited in the afterlife with their son that died.
Yeah, then why wait, right?
Yeah.
But that's at the point where he had the chance to go in there and tell them the truth. But he decided, he said, fuck that. They got money. And he pushed the...
As soon as he said $10,000, I was like, he is not walking away from that.
No. But yeah, and that's when he gets involved with, what's his name?
Richard Jenkins, who is... he's a really rich guy. Absurdly rich.
Who very much seems like no one to fuck with.
Yeah, he was kind of scary. So this guy had this love of his that he lost a long time ago in the days of his youth. And he wants to communicate with her and apologize for everything, right? But off the bat, there are some things I would think would be, I don't know, were pretty clearly read as red flags to you. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. But the fact that their initial introduction took place in this very sketchy location, and the first thing they did to him was attach him to a polygraph. Like, whoa, what the fuck is going on here? That's what you would say. And then he never, ever answered his question about what would have happened to him if he ended up being a con man. Which kind of like really makes you question, okay, this guy is pretty rich and powerful. The trouble that Bradley Cooper could find himself in? Ooh, no.
See, that's the thing. There were so many warning signs about the road he's going down, but he is so full of himself, and in a way has so much to prove that he ignores them. Again, he's the smartest man in the room. He can mentalist his way out of any problem, which he does until he doesn't.
Cate Blanchett told him he's unpredictable.
Yeah.
That's another one of those warnings. There's even this whole scene where Xena comes back for a visit, and she has the tarot cards, and he does this, and it was pretty fucking ominous. I mean, he knows how to read people. He should have read her face. He just chose to not believe her. But she was pretty fucking horrified at the tarot cards he pulled out that pretty much revealed what was going to happen to him.
Yeah, this movie is basically a tragedy. Like all great tragedies, it's a tragedy from the beginning, and there are a million warning signs along the way that scream bad things are gonna happen.
Like really bad things are gonna happen.
But the character just continues along that road. Of course, this is like the most exciting stuff in the movie, because it's like he does one wrong turn, you don't know what the fuck's gonna happen to him, right?
Yeah.
And he has, because at one point he has Cate Blanchett, and you don't know what the fuck she's doing and what's going on with her. Then you have him. Then you have his strained relationship with his wife. Like, what's going to go on there? So there's a lot of things being juggled at that point, and they're ramping up. And then that third act happens, and it's very much a crashing of the plates in a very satisfying way.
So in that third act, let's just skip to the climax here. So Rooney Mara, who previously attempted to leave him, was convinced to come back and is agreeing to do this ridiculous act for Richard Jenkins. The whole idea of this, I know you and I were like looking at each other like, oh my God, what is this poor girl doing? This isn't going to end well for anybody involved. For she basically is going to impersonate the lost love of Richard Jenkins, while Bradley Cooper is going to convince him that this is like he is going to make her appear in everything. And she's wearing the dress and she's putting like fake blood on her, and it's like, oh no, this is bad. Yeah. This isn't going to end well at all. And then what happens is, he figures out Richard Jenkins, he's not an idiot. He figures out what exactly happened. He calls him, you motherfucker. He wouldn't let go of Rooney Mara, and then Bradley Cooper kills him.
Well, he hits Rooney Mara.
Yeah.
And I think that sets him off.
Yeah.
And then he kills him, then kills his...
Pretty viciously.
Violent. Guillermo del Toro is funny, because his films just aren't violent until they are. And then they're just fucking graphic.
Yeah.
So he kills him viciously, and then kills his bodyguard / assistant viciously, and that's the end of the line with Rooney Mara. She leaves him. He's on the run. He goes to Cate Blanchett to get what money he has to try to escape, and that's when the other shoe drops, which I'm sure you enjoy explaining.
No, I would like to hear you explain it.
She fucking played him. And she played him good. She... I guess we didn't get to, but they had therapy sessions, which were her side of the bargain for giving information on rich clients so that he could get info to give them, readings that they'll respond to. So... she basically got him saying some pretty suspect shit during their sessions, basically admitting to a murder. And she took the money. All of it. And what's great is she did it because he embarrassed her. Yeah. And he basically called her weak. Because at the very end, she's like, who's strong now? And you could tell, like, oh, she's crazy. Like, that one thing set her off so much. She went through this whole elaborate thing.
It's like when you said Cersei Lannister or maybe even Claire Underwood moment. Basically.
Yeah, very much so.
And they're both sociopaths.
Yes. Fucking great. And... which leads to the end of the film, which this film has such a perfect ending.
Real quick, one thing I missed the first time, but actually caught the second time. One of the ways she was able to really cause his downfall is she not so subtly introduced him back into drinking.
Yes. Well, when I'm thinking about it, it's really interesting because they get into it a little bit in the movie, but if you think about it, I noticed it more when she talks about how, like, you're really proud about saying how, like, you don't drink, never drink. And you could tell, again, when they're playing these mind games, the only person who's proud of not drinking is an alcoholic, right? Like the only person who would come out. And the thing is, I don't think he'd ever been an alcoholic, but he had the capacity to be one.
Right.
And she's the one who basically turned him into an alcoholic. She really just fucking destroyed him. Like, stripped him of everything.
Even the way she handled that sequence where, like, with her recording system in her office when she revealed what was going on, and even when he came at her, she had her gun ready and everything, shot his ear off, and that was pretty graphic to see. No, man, she's the MVP of the movie. She's and then of course the ending, which, you know, I have to assume is sometime later, and he ends up as a bum, basically traveling the world,
train hopping.
Yeah, train hopping, and the last sequence he has is with a new ringleader of a carnival. And one of the things that he initially sees is that he came into the possession of Enoch, whatever the biblical character for that really monsterish looking baby in a pickle jar that Willem Dafoe had.
Mm-hmm.
And the old radio that Willem Dafoe bought off of him that he began the movie off with. So that's your first sign things are coming full circle with this story. And please do tell this wonderful ending, because I want to hear it from you.
He's at very much the lowest point in his life. He's a bum. He's an alcoholic. And he's got nothing. But he still has his mentalist act. So he goes into this random carnival's office, and he tries to sell them on his act, trying to get a job, trying to get money, trying to survive. And he smells like piss. They immediately turn him away. But the last second, they're like, wait, come back. We don't need a mentalist. We don't have any room for that. But we do have another spot open for you. You know, they pour him a drink, hand it to him, and say, it'll only be temporary until we find a real geek. Which he's being groomed to be the geek of this carnival. To which he responds,
having a mental breakdown?
He starts having a mental break. He's just crying, laughing. And then what does he say?
Yes, or something like that. Yes,
he's like, yes,
it's what I was born to do.
Yeah, what I was born to do.
Wow.
Fantastic fucking ending.
Great endings are amazing.
Yeah.
And really exceptional endings are rare. There are a lot of movies I love that don't have the best of endings. But wow, this was something. And that brings us to the end of the film. I really do hope this film is, at the very least, it's not going to win anything. I would hope that it would be in contention to win Best Cinematography at the very least. And for the crafts, it should be nominated. I'm hopeful that Guillermo and Bradley can get in at least nominations for their respective fields, because it's definitely worthy. And one of my favorite movies of the year. This was so fucking good.
I agree.
So, fuck all of you for not watching it. That's the last thing I will say here. Really disappointing. If you are able to catch it on VOD, please go and see. Because apparently you all deemed this VOD worthy, but not And it's so absurdist too. I know we spoke to this last week, but like there are people out there who are trying to like differentiate, differentiate between films that are like for streaming only and like what is worthy of like being shown on the big screen. If you want to subscribe to that, which don't, but if you do, this one does. It demands it being seen. That's why I wanted to go see it again. I wanted to, but I also wanted to see those amazing visuals again, as it was meant to be, because that's the best you're ever going to see that movie.
For sure.
So, with all that being said, I believe we have the matrix of it all to get to, don't we?
Yep.
So, I'll start off with this. I went back and took a history lesson, basically, and watched the original films, which I never had seen before. Here's what I did know before. I knew The Matrix was a movie. Mm-hmm. I knew the trilogy was this big thing in the early 2000s. I was aware that the first film was considered this classic that changed the direction of movie making, and I was also aware that the sequels were very much treated like the prequels or like the Pirates of the Caribbean sequels, at least the first two, in which they were very much disliked or divisive, convoluted, long, or, all these kind of things and more. So I knew the reputation of these movies at the very least, and I knew Keanu Reeves was involved and Lawrence Fishburne, and it had to do with this idea of this virtual reality. And of course, to me, there are a lot of stories that took place after The Matrix happened that, took those kind of storylines and really went with it. I know you probably had this entire franchise in mind, along with many others, when we did the framework review for S.H.I.E.L.D. years and years and years ago, back in 2000 mm-hmm. and Jesus fuck, when was this? 2017, I believe, the review for it, which I didn't. And that very much is very similar to I think what happens here, at least with the whole framework and this whole virtual reality, and then also, and I don't know if this movie. There's a lot of things, just like the Matrix movies did to change movie making as far as like how, choreography and action sequences, and definitely the influence of slow-mo. That was all definitely there. But there are also, and I believe there are some movements that were formed throughout all this. I do believe the whole red pill, blue pill thing was a movement that was hijacked the original intent of that.
Yeah.
And it subscribed to this theory or delusion, whatever which you prefer, that we're all living in a simulation.
No.
Right? Or that's a very different thing.
That's a very different thing. The whole red pill thing was just like, basically like, oh, if you wake up and see conservatives are awesome, you're taking the red pill. The conservatives hijacked the idea of like the red pill as like, oh yeah, like, oh, you see how the liberal elites control everything. It's Alex Jones shit, right? It's basically.
Well, fuck them then.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think Lily Wachowski said that very clearly on Twitter.
In the movie?
No, in Twitter one time.
On Twitter, but I think also there's a line in the new Matrix that I think is aimed at those people. A
little bit, yeah. There's a lot of things aimed at a lot of people.
In the new one, that's for sure. So, what did I think of these movies? So I saw them. The Matrix, a really wonderfully paced and edited movie. Like, it just moves, and everything is just like nothing. You feel like nothing really there is wasting your time. And I genuinely enjoy Keanu Reeves, Carrie-Anne Moss, and Lawrence Fishburne as all of their characters. And it's just this wonderful world. The whole, revelation of what this was, when we see Keanu Reeves being like, taken out of his pod, that was pretty disgusting. I mean, at least to me. But it's a thrilling movie with great sequences that really is kind of a perfect movie, and it has those faculties that the other two films don't have to nearly the same degree. That being said, though, I really liked The Matrix Reloaded and The Matrix Revolutions. I really loved the lore, the world building of it all. Zion and, the prophecy of the one, There were very clearly a lot of things going on that I wasn't sure how they all fit together as films, but they were all very interesting. I love that these movies were very philosophical and they all had interesting conversations, a lot of which in Reloaded are either contradictory or don't go anywhere, but they're very interesting to listen to. What's his name? The French guy, the Merv or Manjarian or
the some one of those.
The whole thing with causality. There's also the discussion Reloaded with Neo and the counselor. Just a lot of interesting ideas on display in the sequels, and a lot of great action sequences as well. One of the things that I'm really curious to hear though, Peter, about like what the criticisms that you have heard about these movies too. There was this whole thing with the fact that Neo is this Jesus Christ character, and he is, the Messiah and everything. There have been criticisms put up against that. There is this whole thing about what Agent Smith was doing in those movies, which I myself really wasn't too sure about, really. But I also enjoyed Hugo Weaving so much. I didn't care. I didn't care. Maybe he had no reason to be. He was so good. He's so good in those movies. Even that final confrontation, like, why, Mr. Henderson, do you persist because I choose to? Wonderful moment. Mm-hmm. Oh, I guess he flew, and he kind of flew like Superman. I was like, okay, was this intentional?
They literally call it, he's doing his Superman thing.
Yeah, basically. No, I enjoy a lot of these, even side characters as well. It's just a really interesting world, and you can tell that these movies, while flawed, were made with such love and care, and they were very much a byproduct of that era of, franchise blockbuster movie making that we don't get at all in this day and age. So, As a trilogy, I don't know, I had a blast watching them. I mean, I know people hate the sequels, but I never been that kind of guy that usually when there's two sequels that are kind of divisive, I kind of like them, like with Pirates, in that circumstance. So yeah, I like these movies quite a bit. And I binged them because I needed to hurry up and watch those movies because we were going to see the Matrix 4, that same week.
Maybe it's because of the way I saw them. Because I grew up with HBO, and I saw bits and pieces of Revolutions first, and then bits of pieces of Reloaded.
Are you saying that you saw the third movie in a franchise first?
It's different. It was not by choice.
Is it? No, it wasn't my choice either. A lot of the films that I saw just happened to be on the same way.
But it's because I couldn't see rated R movies. It's different. There's a reason I saw them in bits and pieces.
Thing. So the very thing that you were criticizing me for, it turns out you were a victim to as well. So this is an instance where you saw the third film in a trilogy first.
Bits and pieces. But when I finally saw them in full, I did see the first one in full, then the second, and then the third. And I don't think the second and third are as good as the first one. But the hate that they get, I think is insane.
It's absurd.
I literally think it's genuinely absurd. I think it's stupid. Yeah. I think and
it was
crazy.
So much hate. At a lot of different things in those movies.
Especially, I'll be honest, especially Revolutions. Because Revolution, to me, I thought it was a good ending.
Yeah.
And there's so much cool shit. The final fight.
The siege on Zion.
And people are like, oh, that shit sucked. Go back to the Matrix. What? It's so good, though. With fucking giant-ass mechs. And just all the robots and just, I don't know.
They went for it in that sequence.
It's one of those things where it's I feel like a consensus was just created and people haven't gone back and watched them because similar to Spider-Man 3, I think both Matrix Reloaded and Revolutions are better than the vast majority of blockbusters that have been released.
I'm going to include Pirates 2 and 3.
Yeah, for sure. Pirates 3 is pretty fucking messy.
Yeah,
but it's
Spider-Man 3 is messy, but it's a great movie to me.
I know. But out of all of them, I think it's the most messy. But I love it. Like, again, that third act in the Maelstrom, it's why cinemas were made. I fucking love it. No, but yeah, it's one of those things where I'm sorry. Movies that were considered dog shit like 15 years ago are movies I'm praying to watch on the big screen again.
Yeah.
It just feels that way. But yeah, no, for me, is it as good as the original Matrix? The Matrix is a really good, tight film that works on its own, for sure. But the idea that it's like, they just so suck. What a letdown. Matrix 2 and 3. I'm not buying it. I'm just not. There's so much great stuff in all those films.
They were perfectly enjoyable.
Yes.
For a whole host of reasons.
Yeah.
As far as the Wachowskis are concerned, have you seen any of their other work? The only other work that I've seen from them is Speed Racer, which I remember watching, I think, in a theater, if I'm not mistaken.
Shit.
Yeah. And I know that movie is not at all loved. I was having a blast watching it.
It's an insane film.
Isn't it insane? I was like, this is so balls to the wall crazy, but I kind of loved it. Mm-hmm. And then I also really liked, just for the sheer audaciousness of this, and I guess ambition, Cloud Atlas.
You have seen Cloud Atlas. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no.
We talked about this years ago, Cloud Atlas. Yeah.
No, that's another one where it's not perfect.
No.
But I kind of love it. Just what it's going for.
It's just so interesting.
Yeah.
All of it is so interesting. And how interconnected all the different timelines were with each other. There's some pretty questionable makeup with Hugo Weaving.
There's some not PC things going on in the film. But it's not like one of those things where it's like, okay, the intent was clearly not to be racist. I'll put it that way.
Yes.
It was more of like, we are all one. They have the Wachowskis are pretty schmaltzy. It's a lot of like, the love is the answer to everything type shit.
Yeah.
That make up their films. And I think that's clearly what they were going with in Cloud Atlas.
It's also their Netflix series Sense8, which was, I think, for the most part, moderately successful. Had 3 seasons on there. It's got
a hell of a cult following. I gotta be. I've never seen it.
I haven't either.
It's kind of on my list now. I think I want to go back and watch it just to see how I feel, because I do love Cloud Atlas, and I feel like they're bringing that same sort of energy to Sense8.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll go back and give it a whirl.
The one I will say that I thought was downright awful in every regard is Jupiter Ascending.
I've actually never seen Jupiter Ascending either.
It's terrible.
Yeah. I heard that at the time, and that's why I was like, maybe not.
One of the worst movies I've ever seen, Jupiter Ascending.
I mean, I don't know. I have a soft spot in my heart for Valerian, which feels...
That's also a film that I specifically avoided that movie because of how much it reminded me of Jupiter Ascending that I never bothered to watch. Also, Cara Delevingne, who I don't...
You're not
or Dane DeHaan, really. Either of them are
both
just not...
extremely miscast. But I do have such a soft spot in my heart for that film because it's different and it's weird and it's entertaining in strange ways. So yeah, maybe I could give Jupiter Ascending. I'm more interested in watching Sense8. I'll be honest. But yeah, I've seen the Wachowskis. Yeah, Speed Racer I think is another one where it's like misunderstood. I think it's audacious and crazy. Same with Cloud Atlas. I'm trying to think what else they have made.
So Lana and Lily Wachowski are some of the most interesting filmmakers. I think one of the interesting aspects of them, and it's relevant to definitely what was like put in their movies, in particular with The Matrix, is, when the Matrix films were made, they were straight white men, and they're now both trans women.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when the whole thing was like, oh my god, well, I think, I don't know if they've changed it, but at least at the time when I saw it, the credits said the Wachowski brothers.
Yeah, they used to be known as the Wachowski brothers.
And then one of them, I can't remember which one, fully came out as a trans woman.
Right.
And then it was just the Wachowskis.
Yeah.
And then the other one came out as a trans woman as well. And they became the Wachowski sisters.
That was a whole arc.
Yeah. And it's crazy because it's two brothers that started out as to the world seemed, and they both happen to be trans. Mm-hmm. That's a 1 in a million thing, I would think, right? Like, because that's
right,
pretty crazy.
And there were some themes in those Matrix films that, looking back on it, like, oh, okay,
the Matrix is so queer, and I mean that in like in a positive context. Yeah, in the gay context. Not as a negative connotation. Right. But like, yeah, it's so queer. So much of the costumes feel like they're walking off a pride parade, right?
Yeah.
And it's very and I think in the characters switch from the original Matrix, they were supposed to, I don't know which way it was, but they were supposed to be like a man, and then when they jacked into the Matrix, they were a woman, or like vice versa, right? And especially when you think about how the whole thing works, because it was like they were the way it works is what you see in the Matrix is sort of like your mental image of yourself, right? So it would quite literally be a trans character, right? Because in the real world, they may look a certain way, but their mental image of themselves is different when they hit the Matrix. Right. But they weren't allowed to do that. No. So yeah, but that's one of the things that I kind of love about the Matrix is, I don't want to say how gay it is, because it's not like gay, but how queer it is. Mm-hmm. And yeah, there's not many, talk about representation. How many trans directors can you think of? How many trans people, period, can you think of working in Hollywood, right? I can think of maybe like 4. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's I think it's cool, just the success, and I think it definitely led to such an interesting world, right? Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. And of course people are like, oh yeah, the original Matrix is a trans allegory because the red pill at that time, estrogen, the pill was red, and Mr. Anderson, the way that the villain always goes like Mr. Anderson, like, oh, they're dead naming him, which is basically saying they're calling him by his male name, right? And he does it intentionally, almost to hurt him. The people have made that sort of connections since then. But no, there's just so much to those films, and I really love them. Again, yeah. My favorite genre of film is original blockbusters, and that genre is dead. And The Matrix was one of the last real successful ones. The Matrix trilogy as a whole.
Well, you still got blockbusters. Maybe not original, but you still got blockbusters.
That's what I mean, though. Original blockbusters. Mm-hmm. I love those, because it's like everything about it is born on the screen, right? I don't know. I think it's so cool. Like Indiana Jones or Back to the Future, right? Like people just got together, they had an idea, they wrote a script, and it's yeah. I don't know.
I'm curious. Then every sequel in a blockbuster, you put that in its own subgenre?
Yeah, because it's a sequel to an original blockbuster. Like,
but they're still blockbusters.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think originality and blockbuster are the opposite.
No, I was just like, well, when you say like original blockbusters, I get what you're trying to say, but like if you're not counting the sequels, so you would just like they're two different kinds of blockbusters, which yeah, that's what they are. But it's like, what would then, if your favorite genre are original blockbusters, what would your second favorite genre movie be?
I don't know, horror.
Oh, okay.
I guess I love blockbusters, but I think my favorite I don't know. It's such movie magic to see an original blockbuster, right?
Right. Yeah.
Because it's all this money. It's a story born for the screen, and I don't know. I think there's just something really special about that.
I agree with you, but I think that therein lies maybe a difference between you and I. Like, I don't necessarily inherently hold the original above some of the sequels, and a lot of franchises.
Oh no!
I
don't mean like literally. The first film is the best. I'm saying like the idea, right? So like Indiana Jones. I'm not saying the best Indiana Jones is the first one, but the idea of Indiana Jones was born from just two guys saying like, "Hey, I have an idea for a movie." It's 007, but he's an archaeologist, right? Like, oh yeah, let's try it out. Like, boom, happens, right? I'm talking that, not just endless IP that we milk forever. You know what I'm saying?
No, I get you. What did you think of the announcement of a Matrix 4? Did you have any expectation of what this would be? I know this is a film that they were trying to make for a long time. Lana Wachowski comes back by herself, but I was really curious. Like, I don't think we ever discussed your feelings on when they first announced this movie and how you felt about this being a thing in the first place.
I mean, I was unsure. I was excited, but unsure. Because I do really love the Wachowskis. And, obviously, Keanu Reeves still got it, looking at those John Wick films. So I was like, and also the Matrix films, again, it's just the kind of blockbuster that's so weird and not your typical type of blockbuster. I was very much open to it. I was like, yeah, okay, let's see. And I was very much excited about it. I would say I was excited.
Just to comment real quick on how the film has performed, would you have, I don't know, do you think, clearly I don't feel December in general was a great month to release this movie, certainly not against Spider-Man. Do you think the film would have performed better if it were in a different month? Again, it would have been in a pandemic regardless of it, but would you have moved it elsewhere? Again, there's also the HBO Max component of it, which I don't know how much ate into it, but is a component. I
mean, there's a lot. There's it opening in tandem with Spider-Man. There's the HBO Max. There's the middling reviews. It just feels like it's one thing stepped on.
It's also 20 years later. Yeah. Kind of almost 20 years later after the last one.
And yeah, I don't know. The type of movies people are demanding have obviously changed, right?
So you feel like there really wasn't much escaping that one way or the other?
For sure, right? But I think it's multiple things. I just don't think it's just one.
Right. Like most things, there are multiple things happening.
Yeah.
All right. Well, did you put any stock or even bother to read what the reaction was to this film before you seeing this?
I did.
And how did that make you feel?
Excited.
Can you please explain? Tell us why?
Because people were coming away from this film feeling very different things. Some people came away going like it was perfect. I loved it. They're saying some things where it's like it's angry, it's out there, it's a lot of things, and they loved it. And then other people were like, what a fucking waste. What the fuck was that? Which got me excited. I was like, yes. Because I'm so used to reading reviews for new blockbusters. 99% of the time, it's Marvel. And it's like, ooh.
Glowing reviews, a consensus overall.
It's
and
so
then we
fun.
see them and it's...
There's so many fan moments. Stay for the Easter eggs. And it's just like, oh my God. Like, I'm just so sick of that type of film. So the fact that it's like, this is not what you expected, I got really excited.
Yeah, it's comical, depressing, all at the same time. That at this point, and it's been no secret, I think it's been our arc this year, both you and I, where we're far more excited about movies when we hear a mixed reaction than an overwhelmingly positive one.
Yeah.
That's kind of the point that we've been reduced to now, because when a film receives overwhelming praise, we walk away with anything but to say about the movie. There are anomalies for both of them, to be sure. But I myself was getting very interested because there were some people who I hold a very high opinion of that were really praising this film, like Houston Coley and Patrick Willems. And then there were others who I hold different views on, that were calling this a lousy movie or whatever. And I let me just say, you teased some really good reactions about this from a typical crowd of reviewers that we go and see online. And I did a quick skim around the usual ones. And who I'm referring to are John Campea, Christian Harloff, Dan Murrell, Double Toasted, Grace Randolph. Those are the ones that I kind of skimmed over. And their reactions were pretty typical and hilarious for the kind of stuff that they all look for. It's pretty hilarious how they all came around the same lines of it. I think to me the funniest reaction was Grace Randolph, because you could tell she was kind of offended because very much so this movie has a lot of things on its mind. And one of the things, and we'll get into that very, very soon, is there's a meta commentary on the film industry, and this film being a byproduct of it. And you can definitely tell that in Randolph's review, she took offense to that being criticized, because she lives and dies on that whole game of the film industry. That's just who she is, and she makes no secret about that.
I mean, she literally had a whole section going like, I think she talks about like Walt Disney and how like that worked great for them. The artist,
Walt Disney and his brother Roy, because Roy was the company guy, and Walt was the artist, and then like you can make this kind of relationship work, and that's how everybody should base it off. It shouldn't be one or the other.
Fuck that.
Yeah.
The idea that all art has to be about making money is sad.
Disgusting?
Well, both. Like, that's so crazy to me.
And then others clearly didn't understand what was happening in the movie. Other reviewers, they didn't...
Yeah, I just feel like they weren't engaging with it.
They weren't. Either they did identify what it was and they didn't like it, or...
But see, some people did, right? I think there were a lot of people who are like, I get what this is, I get what it's going for, but I don't like it. I just would have preferred a more traditional fourth film. Which is like, okay, like I get that for sure.
Right.
But then there are other people who are reviewing it like it was a traditional fourth film, when it very clearly wasn't trying to be, and kind of skipping over a lot of the things that the movie was basically screaming at your face. And it's like, it feels weird that you're not even touching on that. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. So all of that being said, shall we get into our letterbox description of The Matrix Ressurections?
Why the fuck not? The Matrix Ressurections, directed by Lana Wachowski. Return to the source. Plagued by strange memories, Neo's life takes an unexpected turn when he finds himself back inside the Matrix. Really short descriptions today. All three films.
Yeah.
Cast: Keanu Reeves, Carrie-Anne Moss, Yahya Abdul-Mateen.
The second.
Well, here it just says Yahya Abdul-Mateen. Maybe he got promoted. Jonathan Groff, Jessica Henwick, Neil Patrick Harris, Jada Pinkett Smith, Priyanka Chopra, Christina
Jonas. Priyanka Chopra Jonas.
It does not say Jonas. Christina Ricci, Lambert Wilson, Andrew Lewis, and others. Directed by Alana Wachowski. Produced by Lana Wachowski. Written by, you
Lana
guessed
Wachowski.
it, Lana Wachowski.
Let's get some real base level stuff out of the way with, because there's a lot of meaty stuff we want to get into about this movie. Great cast, first and foremost.
Oh, yeah.
I really enjoyed this cast. It's in particular, and by the way, we're not even going to bother at this point. Spoilers all the way throughout here, okay? So you are warned. Yahya and Jonathan Groff here play two legacy characters, but different versions of those characters. You have Groff here doing a very good job as Smith. Like it feels like it, but also his own take on it. And then you also have Yahya, which is his own interpretation of Morpheus in the absence of Lawrence Fishburne and Hugo Weaving. So just to start off with, Jessica Henwick was really good too.
I really like her.
Yeah.
I want her to get in more successful things.
I really do want to see that as well. And then as far as our returning cast, surprised to see Jada Pinkett Smith.
Yeah.
As Niobe.
She's, despite what she's done to Will Smith's life, she is a good actress. She really is.
I haven't seen her in much lately, but she came back as this character who's aged 60 years older than last we saw her. All the other characters, like Lawrence Fishburne's Morpheus, we presume are dead because of old age and everything. And so she's kind of like the general left standing, which was pretty, cool to see. And then we have, of course, the man himself, the man, the myth, the legend, Keanu Reeves as Neo, Mr. Anderson, Carrie-Anne Moss as Thomas, and then Carrie-Anne Moss as Trinity.
Or Tiffany.
And we start off this movie with, I was really curious what was going to happen, because we ended the last movie with them both dead.
Pretty definitively.
So yeah, that too. So I was like, I wonder how they bring them back, because they're clearly, and as they should be, and were advertised, the main focus of this movie and everything. Real quick, Neil Patrick Harris was perfect. Loved it.
Loved him in this movie too,
yeah. But just really fun interactions with all the cast and characters. The action is good. It's fine. It's serviceable. I don't think it holds a candle to what came before it, but it was still really well executed. I especially like the last sequence with all the bots.
That was fun.
That are throwing themselves over the building, and then Neo and Trinity on the motorcycle. Mm-hmm. That was a lot of fun. But action very clearly isn't on this movie's mind. So I'm not even that again. I'm not saying that's an excuse, but it's really kind of an afterthought, and you can take that as a negative or a positive. It was whatever. If we want to talk about bad action sequences, well, we can talk about bad action sequences in other movies. Let's be clear about that. And at least to me, as far as VFX are concerned, I didn't notice anything on the level of bad that we're accustomed with MCU.
Yeah, no, not nearly at that level.
So
I saw some people going "Oh, the CG's bad," and I'm like,
"What? Where?"
Comparatively, I some things look slightly wonky, but it's not bad. I would never say bad. I don't know. That was weird to me.
A big plus of this film is a lot of really interesting ideas going on. Mm-hmm. So many interesting ideas as far as where, this world has gone 60 years. There has been peace between the humans and the machines. The machines apparently had their own inter-conflict war, and that resulted with some machines joining the side of humans, which that is a very interesting place to go for something as The Matrix. there's an alliance, and then you have these new beings called synths or sentients, which are basically programs, but they also have the ability now to also be in the real world through their own means. It's just a very different place. And then of course where this Matrix is, it's a different Matrix where we of course left it. Both Trinity and Neo have been resurrected, and that's kind of the point that powers, I guess, this Matrix. So a lot of really cool stuff going on, really, really all the way throughout. I love the visuals. To me, this is kind of like, you can view this movie in one of two different ways. Mm-hmm. I can understand most people when they say, like, you know what, this doesn't feel like a natural, and it's not really a fourth installment of this Matrix franchise. And for that reason, I love it. But at the same time, that a lot of that stuff is mostly limited to the first third of the film, and everything else kind of mostly plays like a straight fourth installment. And it ends in a place where, like, for me, I can view all four films and like be perfectly fine with them as a saga. Mm-hmm. Which may make me kind of like a rare animal in this universe, because I don't think anybody else would agree with that statement. That being said, I had a lot of fun with this movie. There are aspects that I fucking adore. This was a hysterical experience and thrilling in places. I liked all of them. And again, I like Reeves and Moss together. It's one of these blockbusters that falls into the category of messy, but it also falls into the category of endlessly interesting for a various number of reasons that warm my heart. And the fact that it's getting all this hate makes me love it even more. For that, I just love that this exists.
It's such a yeah. It's, you lied earlier when you said that you watched these three films for this film. You watched 5 films for this film, because you also went back and watched Gremlins and Gremlins 2. And
yes, I rewatched Gremlins last night, and then for the first time, I dove into the sheer madness that is Gremlins 2. Gremlins 2, the new batch, has to be, without question, just one of the best movies ever made. Just for the sheer audaciousness of it. That movie is an experience. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, it's just like, oh my God, this is maybe the best Looney Tunes movie ever made.
and the reason that you saw Gremlins 2 is because in a lot of ways, this film is like a marriage between Gremlins 2 and a lot of people have pointed this out, and I noticed it before the film even came out. New Nightmare by Wes Craven. Have you heard people say that?
No.
Okay.
No.
New Nightmare was like technically, like, I don't even know, like the 7th or 8th A Nightmare on Elm Street film. That's the film where Wes Craven did the first one, and then, you know, I don't know if he produced, there's a fuck ton of sequels, and then he came back and he did New Nightmare, which was this meta film in which you follow the actress from the first film. Wes Craven himself comes out in the film. Robert Englund, who plays what's it called? Freddy, comes out as himself, as Robert Englund. And it's basically about making a new Nightmare on Elm Street film. And it's incredibly meta, and it's like the actress starts to kind of lose it because of that, and it's really interesting. It's very different, and a lot of people started pointing that out when they came out. Like, yeah, it's like anything, it's like New Nightmare, which I was like, yeah, for sure, it's definitely like New Nightmare, but it's also a lot like Gremlins 2. because it has just such an over-the-top sense of humor about itself and the history of the Matrix. And
I have a little bit of a bone to pick with Alexis Moreno. Cutting you off for this.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
It really she has this thing where she is like terrified and repulsed by the sight of E.T. And then I look at those Gremlin movies and she loves them, and I'm like, it's really weird that she likes them, because they're kind of horror comedies, really, or dark comedies, if you want to put it that way. But what those things turn into, I don't know how she likes them. I mean, I don't know how she would have liked them from the perspective of her as a kid, and she has long, gone on record with saying how those kind of items in movies would like repel her from even bothering to see.
I think
I don't know how she can look at that and like be like, oh, they're cute and everything, but
she
then
loved
she looks at
Gizmo.
and like run away.
I guarantee it's all about Gizmo. Well, the first one is more of like it plays it pretty straight until the third act becomes a dark comedy, I would say. Yeah. Because when they're monsters and they first appear, they're pretty scary, right? Yeah. But then the third act, it's a little bit of a dark comedy. And then the sequel is a Looney Tunes film. Like it's completely different, right? But it has such a sense of humor about the first Gremlins and just the films and everything in general. And really, it became a film talking about society and all kinds of shit. You know, it really branched out. You sent me the clip that I love so much about someone questioning the logic of the first film. The response from the film is immediately getting fucking thrashed by a gremlin
who just like pops out of the desk.
Yeah, no logical way, because it's literally them reaching out and telling you to shut the fuck up. Just watch the fucking movie. It's so great, and that's a lot of what this Matrix is. Matrix Resurrections, especially that first third. You talk about how you really like well, not that you really like, but the first third is sort of that sort of meta stuff, and then it kind of transitions into a more normal Matrix films, and that works with you on that level.
Yeah, it's for still, me, it works as two different kinds of movies for me at the same time. I recognize that, like, on some level, they do come into, like, they do clash a little bit, but for the most part, while this movie does something that's, like, entirely separate of what this universe is, at the end of the day, as it gets to that conclusion, it still feels to me like a straight Matrix film when it all comes to its resolution.
The only issue I have with the straight Matrix film, like, only thing that holds it back for me is the action, because the action in the original films is so smooth. Like the cuts and the way it's framed.
Well, the action in the original was revolutionary.
Yes, it was. And I think Lana herself has talked about how, like, she used to frame action like a graphic novel, which you can definitely tell. Like she said, it was like a comic book. Like each frame, she'd have it like drawn out beforehand of the fight scene, and that's how she would shoot stuff. But recently, I think she says, like, since her transition, she's like, I just sort of let the camera flow. That looseness is sort of translated through her film, right? So I think that I like that, and that's cool. But that's why I kind of feel like I wanted the film to be less Matrixy and more that first third, because that first third was fucking killing it. There's still some really good shit in I think the second half, right? But in the beginning, it's so over the top and in your face, and it's so funny to me, and I love it. We were having to
hold our laughter in the audience. We really had to.
It's so good. Everything with him basically being like, oh, he's a game designer, and he actually, the first three movies are just video games that he designed, and all the commentary that comes with that about how his sleazy business partner that's sort of in charge of him being represented as Mr. Smith and being like, Warner Brothers commissioned another one, right?
Our beloved
benefactor Warner Brothers
has informed us that they
company,
intend to make a sequel to the original trilogy, with or without us.
Yeah. And the way he just looks at the camera and he's like, well, the great thing is stories never have to end. They just can keep going on and on.
That's the moment where I really had to fight to just like not burst into complete like cackling style laughter, because we discussed this off screen as well, where like that really felt like they saw the Disney Plus commercial where their tagline is "the stories never have to end," and that they were using that when they said, "Now the stories never really end, do they?"
And what's funny is in the first trailer for The Matrix, the trailer ends with him saying the line like, going back to the Matrix, and it's like boom, like it's this big, awesome, bombastic thing. But in the film, that line is like dread. Like, oh my God, like we're going back to the Matrix. Like it's dread for the main character, Neo. Right. And he's just like, fuck. And
who very much felt like that's Lana, how that whole sequence of events felt exactly how Lana would have when she went through this whole process or ordeal, shall we say, when she was informed that they were going to make a sequel with or without her. Like that felt like, oh, I'll just use this actual thing that happened to me and put it in this movie as a fuck you to them for making me do this movie.
And I loved the that where Christina Ricci, I it's so funny to me, where she's handing out like, these are focus tested packets as we on what people think of when they think of the Matrix. And she's like, the two big words that they associate it with is fresh and new, and that's something I really think we're gonna bring to Matrix 4 and sequels beyond. It's so in your face about its disdain for the current nostalgia based pop culture blockbusters that we're in right now.
I mean, that's, I think, one of the big that's like one of the big reasons why I kind of love this movie, is the fact that it itself is a byproduct of the film industry. It is The Matrix 4. It is a sequel to an old franchise, right? One that many probably, deemed as like unnecessary. And for the most part, we're right to assume it was that way just when it was announced. But Matrix Resurrections ends up being also an indictment of what the film industry has become by greenlighting such sequels in the first place. And can I just say, Warner Brothers does a lot of stuff that, quite frankly, are deserved to be criticized.
For sure.
Their complete mishandling and fuckery of the DC films this last decade, I think that is an unmitigated failure that continues to know no bounds. It continues to bite them in the ass, and they really fucked up hard.
A third Fantastic Beasts film. Like, this is the thing. When WB fucks up, they fuck up hard. But when they get it right, they also get it right hard. Like,
they do.
As much as this movie is a middle finger to WB, the fact that it exists kind of also makes me respect WB more.
Like, I mean, could you just imagine being a Warner Brothers executive watching a screening of that and just like allowing that to be released in theaters?
Yeah.
If this was any other studio, that shit would have been cut.
Disney only allows love and reverence for its brand.
The only time they allow like a little bit of a jab is in their new Disney movies, where they're like, in Moana, that scene where it's like, if you start singing, I'm going to, which is not even a criticism.
Not even it's like the weakest.
They pretend like
thing.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know how it's bullshit? Because you look at the Simpsons movie where they're like, they have a little joke about how like, I'm the mascot for an evil corporation. And now the only new Simpsons shit that's released on Disney is just Disney characters and Disney icon mascots going like, look, Star Wars, look, Marvel, but Homer's here. It's oh my God. It's so not the same. I'll put it that way.
And to be fair, WB, this isn't exactly new for them. They've allowed this stuff to happen. Look at Joe Dante's Gremlins too.
Yes,
that was their own studio, and they allowed that to happen.
That was another fuck you, and it's amazing. I love it. So I don't know. I respect WB in ways that I just can't other movie studios.
They're also one of the last, maybe truly the last big studio that does value auteurs.
They release,
especially in big commercial films. Look like earlier this year with Denis Villeneuve and Dune.
They gave that to him after Blade Runner 2049, which they also release, and it's just like I know a lot. It's kind of hip to hate on WB, but
hey, we always will be grateful for rescuing James Gunn's career.
The Suicide Squad is fucking awesome. The Batman looks amazing. Both those films look better than 99.999% of MCU films. Like, I'm sorry. Like, sure, they got some real shit that they release, but I much rather have that, like,
Mad Max.
Like, I much rather have that risk of, like, okay, they're going to release a lot of just garbage, but they're also going to release some all-time amazing films. Mm-hmm. I much rather have that back and forth than just like a constant stream of okay. So, and this is another example, Matrix.
Which, can we also take a real quick shout out to the 20th Century Studios, who used to be 20th Century Fox before Disney acquired it. But look at like look at the Fox films we've had: Last Duel, West Side Story, Nightmare Alley, Kingsman. All very different films, all from like really established, some long established filmmakers. But that was also a studio, one of the last ones that really did take chances as well with different kinds of films.
For sure.
And we saw what happened to them.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
But yeah, that's why I don't even bring them up, because they're already dead.
Yeah.
They've already been absorbed by the giant monster, the giant rat.
The executives that greenlit those films were fired from Disney. They went on to Paramount, and where they were fired again.
Yeah. Disney's about to own everything. Anyways, talking about Matrix Resurrections. Yeah, like that whole...
Oh, real quick, can I ask? Gremlins. So Disney was okay with Snow White being in those movies? There were whole scenes from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Back then, it was very different.
Right.
Back then, it was a lot easier to get studios to play nice with each other.
Your Christmas gift that you gave me was an example of that. Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And even though it was a headache, it was still possible. Today, it's no longer possible. Like, because, I read a lot of comics. There are old comics of, like, Batman meets Spider-Man and stuff like that, where DC and Marvel would occasionally, do some team ups every once in a while. And I'm sure it was a headache, to do it, but it would happen. That's never going to happen. Mm-hmm. Never in a million years.
So back to the Matrix.
Back to the Matrix. Yeah, that whole first, third half, whatever, is so much fun, and I love it so much.
Just that whole sequence, especially when like they're in like with you said Christina Ricci?
Yeah.
And then what happens afterward, these constant series of board meetings, and you see Neo just just dying on the inside even more and more so, just kind of unraveling completely. We see shots of him sitting on a toilet, which made me laugh. Him in a bathtub with a rubber duck on his head. It's just like with White Rabbit playing in the background. It's just like, that was a great sequence, hysterical. And then of course all the meta-ness going on with all the different like people that were recruited to be part of those focus groups, like saying like basically like reviewing like what made the Matrix so popular in the first place, all the trans politics, and
it's anti-capitalist.
Yeah, there was even I kid you not, there's this moment where one of them says, I didn't love the first like some of you did, and then like it's talking about all the action and the explosions that people want and that were in the sequels. It's like, whoa. It's like, wow.
Yeah. And what I love is it's a lot of like, I guess you would call punk rock rage about everything with the Matrix going on there, but it's all dropped from like the genuine sincerity of the love story of Neo and Trinity, because that stuff is played so sincerely. I think throughout the film,
yes.
It's as schmaltzy as possible, and I personally wouldn't have it any other way.
I wouldn't have it any other way because it works here.
Yes.
It works.
Mm-hmm. And I really like that because there's a lot of anger to the film, which I love. It's not about being angry.
Right.
It's about there's a much warmer message to it than that. There's a lot of things it's going for, right? But I think with just about everything the Wachowskis have released, it's all about like this very schmaltzy love conquers all type thing. Mm-hmm. And I think that's much to...
That's literally in the plot. Like it was the love that kept this Matrix going, and it's like the whole idea of them, reuniting would completely overtake the Matrix, or the machines, or the analysts, and in this case in the form of Neil Patrick Harris, which is why he had to separate them, but just be close enough to where they would want to continue living and power this Matrix. Mm-hmm. That was a cool angle too, and the visuals of that when they reunited was pretty great too as well. I agree with you. It's not solely an angry movie. It is actually about love, and that's kind of like what really makes me like the Wachowskis myself. Can I ask though, like, because you did say like we did identify the fact that in a pretty overt way, you could tell Lana was angry at the film industry itself and then the studio system. What other groups of people would you say the film was openly attacking?
I think very obviously people that have co-opted ideas
or
hijacked ideas and imagery and all kinds of stuff from their films to suit their own agendas that they're very much opposed to, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's very obvious. They're talking about. Yeah, no, it's and it's constant, right? Like throughout the whole film, because even when they get into the more Matrixy aspects of it, you have like the Merovingian just coming in like Twitter's idea of Martin Scorsese. Just like it's almost like he's in the audience yelling at the movie as mindless action is going on, like, you motherfuckers. Like he basically comes off that way.
It's one of my, oh my god, that whole scene is one of my favorite scenes, like, in the whole thing. And you know what? Hold on, let me just play this right here because I have to, right? So this is the...
Gonna get copyright.
Is it gonna be copyrighted?
Actually, I don't know.
I don't think it will be. It's like this whole... Let me see here.
The French accent really pulls it together.
But it's like, let me just the whole thing here was art, films, books were all better. Originality mattered, and then you gave us all of this face Zucker suck. I love that line, face Zucker suck. I mean, obviously pulling in Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg in there, and then like he spits after he finished that. Oh my god, oh my god, that scene. And it's also so weird because he's like a big character from the original movies. But his entire presence is ignored. Everybody else in that scene, they're all having their fight, and he's just like yelling at them, and they're not. Well, that's what it is.
It's like it's like he's Twitter's idea of Martin Scorsese yelling at the screen, just like you ruined everything. It's like if Martin went to go see a Marvel film, and he's just yelling at the screen. But then you also have like the analyst, who's like a self-aware...
Wait, hold on. I have to stop you. This our sequel franchise spinoff. That's the last line he says. Just our sequel franchise spinoff. And then he just like walks away off
throwing out buzzwords. But like there's a lot of characters that they bring back, and it's not that it's the sort of self-aware way they explore those characters, right? Like with Morpheus, I love the whole thing with his entrance where he's like, at last. Like he does it in such a comedic way. And of course he points out like the first time you meet Morpheus in the original film, it's so dramatic and just the drama to it, and here he's just walked out of a bathroom stall in a purple suit, just comedically at last. I love that shit.
But in that moment, yeah, because he's bringing attention to the callback, but it should not be missed here that the people who were being mocked there were a lot of audiences, like kind of like we mentioned it at that tweet a few minutes ago when we're talking about Nightmare Alley, about how people all want from an emotional connection out of movies these days are these callbacks, is all this nostalgia and everything. And in many ways, it was kind of like Spider-Man No Way Home right now is in theaters, and that film very much is like catering to the fans so hard, and in particular moments in the film validating all of the fandom discussions, whereas in here the film very hilariously mocks them for like thinking that that's what made these movies great, or if that's like, or the fact that they were cherished for those reasons. I mean, just like
the the fact that they just want to see the same shit again, right?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Yes. Like that, because basically, like in that moment, Yahya Abdul is like, "This is what you want, right?"
Yeah.
Kind of like, almost like looking at the screen, like, "This is what you guys want out of these movies." So I'm pointing out that this is what you guys want.
At another point, he literally says, like, nothing eases the mind like nostalgia, as they literally show you images on the walls of the first Matrix movie.
Literally, yeah. So it's kind of like the inverse of No Way Home, where it's like to me, these are examples for this really being the movie that people think The Last Jedi is.
Yeah, for sure.
Which I love the balls that this movie does for doing that, because quite frankly, considering how certain circles of fandom have become quite toxic, and in general, fandom really pushes really problematic and troubling trends for filmmaking going forward. The entitlement of it all.
Like, you need to respect fans. And this film is like, no, we're going to challenge fans.
And even at some point say, fuck off.
Yes, and fuck off to certain fans, yeah.
There's even a middle finger foam or like...
It's like a statue middle finger.
in Neo's office. Like, it very clearly tells you what's going to happen here. But I love the fact that people are being fucking challenged and put off by this. Because you know what? Fuck it. They need to. It's high time they need to.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think that's the only reason why I would have wanted the movie to be more of that.
Right.
Just so it's a little bit more clear, because then it becomes more of
so like a full-blown Gremlins too.
Yes. That's why it's kind of like a cross between Gremlins 2 and New Nightmare. Because New Nightmare does...
Right.
It still plays it like a horror, but it's very meta about it. Whereas Gremlins was like, we're full comedy. This one goes a little bit in between.
And you were getting to Neil Patrick Harris?
Yeah.
Let me get to that real quick. Let me play this through.
Bothered to realize that you don't give a shit about facts. It's all about fiction. The only world that matters is the one in here. And you people believe the craziest shit. Why? What validates and makes your fictions real? Feelings.
It's actually funny you play that line, because I was about to say the analyst, played by Neil Patrick Harris, is very clearly who's the main villain, is very clearly like a self-aware Ben Shapiro. Like, that's basically who the villain is. Who knows that who controls people through their emotions, right? And knows that, through fear and desperation and loneliness, he can control people. Which, who does that kind of shit, right?
Right.
So yeah, no, I love Neil Patrick Harris in this. I think he plays it so. It's funny. I think what grounds the film is obviously Trinity and Neo, because they are still Trinity and Neo, right?
Yes.
And their love is played so straight, and I think that's really what anchors the whole film from beginning to end. But I think my favorites are just the new actors, because they come in and they just eat the screen.
Yeah.
Neil Patrick Harris, Jonathan Groff, even Yaya,
Jessica.
Yeah, Jessica plays it pretty straight too, but she's great.
Well, she's got some lines too. Like, I mean, her whole thing is Bugs Bunny, and she says, "What's up, Doc?" at some point.
It's so good. I love it. But yeah, they're so much fun, and we were talking about this yesterday. Even the straight Matrix stuff is still pretty cool. Like they can still do the world building.
Yes, they can. Like that. I thought it was pretty ingenious how the analyst, played by Neil Patrick Harris here, basically used one of the greatest strengths that Neo had in his abilities to like do a slow motion and stop the bullets, and he used that against them. Yeah. It was clever as hell.
He's like, yeah, I took a, what's it called? I took a, I looked at what you did, right? And it's like the whole bullet time thing, it's like, that was my inspiration, for control. And he would basically like freeze time to the point where it moved so slow, like a reverse bullet time, which was, again, that's a really fucking cool. And then really just how the world of the Matrix had progressed since you last saw it. That was one of the things that always worries me about these kinds of films, especially when they play it straight. It's like, okay, the story ended decades ago.
It ended with peace too.
And you're
gonna undo it?
It reminds me of Star Wars too, where it's like, you run the risk of having this feeling like nothing mattered. And they and again, the film directly looked at you and said, like, well, we'll address that. Like, no, they did matter.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, I thought that was cool. Yeah, because there's really neat stuff with the relationship between the humans and the robots, and humans and AI.
Yeah.
All of that, all the programs. Yeah.
Can we talk about the implications of the ending of the film? So, in your perspective, the fact that Trinity was the one that flew.
Well, they both flew by the end.
At the end, but she was the first. What did that signal to you? At least, what was the intent behind that?
The intent behind it was, I think, the intent behind the whole film, which is that they were equals.
Right.
It's a little biblical. They love their biblical allegories.
Matrix movies were never subtle, guys.
They've never been subtle. Which is this, in the Bible, it's like a man and woman become one type stuff. And I think it's like they're so in love that they are one. Separated, they're nothing. Together, they are one.
Yeah.
That's where their power comes from. That's where everything. And again, I think it's all about the whole power of love type shit, right?
Yeah.
Real hippie shit. I dig it.
And that's why the analysts brought them back to life in these resurrections. Like they literally invented methods of resurrection to power this new Matrix. That's a very fascinating idea. That they died, they came back to life, and they're still in love, and their love is still there and real.
Love is literally fueling the fucking Matrix.
Yeah.
That's basically what you get from it, and yeah, and I think just the whole idea of like, oh, she's flying and she has all this power is to show it's not like, well, Neo's the one and then she's the love interest. It's that they together they are one. That's why they fly off together holding hands into the sunset.
And I like that ending.
It's great.
I liked it. I mean, I like endings like that in general, but to me, it's like, okay, that's why when that ending, I love that ending for them both. I love happy endings. I mean, I like the ending of Revolutions too, but they both died. And so here they live. And I guess the implication there being is, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but now with their combined power, they can basically take over the Matrix now.
Yeah, they basically control the Matrix. And
That's the whole ball game now.
Yeah. Well, that's why to me, it's like, this is it. Like, there's no more.
We sure about that? We sure there's not going to be?
I hope there's no more, because I'm not interested in Matrix without the Wachowskis.
Yeah.
I mean, there is the Animatrix. Have you ever saw the Animatrix?
I did not know. I've heard of it, but never saw that one.
It's a bunch of anime shorts about stories having to do in the world of the Matrix. And there is a lot of really cool ones. There's one that shows the origins, the history of the original war between humans and the robots. There's a really cool one where it's a runner, an Olympic, I don't know if it's Olympic, but a professional runner, right? And he's running so fast and so hard that he's breaking the boundaries of the Matrix. Right. So like he's getting up to speeds that because as an athlete, you push yourself so much, and it's all about pushing what the human body is capable of. And it gets to the point where he starts to push the boundaries of the Matrix, where he starts to like, when he hits a certain speed, he like almost wakes up in his pod, and it's this kind of stuff. And there's several different stories. Like there's actually a specific story, because the Matrix Animatrix was released in between the first one and the second one, that specifically ties into the second one.
Right. And
it's like at the very beginning of Reloaded, they talk about like, oh yeah, the last ship, Osiris or something. They talk about a ship that sent the message that let them know that the machines were attacking.
They were coming after Zion.
Yes. And the short is them getting that information that that the machines were going to attack. It's basically Rogue One short.
Yeah. It sounds a lot like Rogue One.
So I mean, I guess they could, but I like this sort of meta weird sort of cherry on top to end the Matrix films.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know where else you can go, honestly.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm really curious where particularly this movie falls in our favorites of the year.
I don't know. Because as a movie, I don't know how great it is. But as what it is, I love it. It's weird. It's a very weird experience, but the fact that it's so hard to discuss in that way kind of makes me enjoy it more.
Yeah. And I mean, we should note that like several of the personalities that I mentioned at the top have already like released worst films of the year list, and this one is pretty popular.
Yeah. I mean, if you were interested in that sequel reboot type thing, if you wanted the next genuine Matrix film, I get why you're angry, right? For sure.
Because they probably wanted what? They wanted a Ghostbusters Afterlife and The Force Awakens?
100%. They wanted Force Awakens, they wanted Ghostbusters Afterlife, they wanted that. And if you wanted that, I get it, right? But as what
I'm also
it is,
tired of people getting that
I'm
all
also
the time.
tired of that, right? Like,
so the fact that this movie like stands up against it and says, no, fuck off, that makes me love it so much.
It's like if you wanted a more traditional Gremlins sequel, for sure, I get why you don't like Gremlins 2, but at the same time, I vastly prefer what we got because it's so unique and out there and interesting and fun to watch. And that's kind of where I am with Ressurections. I think there is still some issues for sure.
Of course. Yeah, it's not a perfect movie by any means.
Yeah.
Probably not even great, but I think there's great stuff in it that just makes me admire it so much. It's certainly so much more than something like Shang-Chi.
I admired it so much that a lot of the problems that exist, which they do exist, I'm almost like... I see them and I recognize them and they're still there, but I just admire it so much. I'm like, I'm glad something like this was still made and was able to get released.
What did you make of the choice to continue it? Like when they do all the callbacks, they have so much footage from the old films.
Yeah, that's another thing, right? It's weird because a lot of the issues I have with the film, you can make arguments where it's like, well, it's supposed to be that way. So it's like, maybe, okay. One side of me says like it's directly confronting the whole nostalgia shit where it's literally just showing you images of the original film, but I think they did that best in the pill scene where they themselves projected the scenes from the original film onto the walls and was literally like, hey, you feel better with nostalgia, right? Like I think that worked better than intercutting constantly. I think a few intercuts here and there, but I think they did it way too much.
Too many times.
Yeah, way too
like,
much.
Okay, guys, we get it. Like, I almost wondered to myself, like, are they doing this to a point to really, like, beat this to the ground?
That's what I mean, right? Like, how much of it is intentional to make a point and how much of it is just badly done? I don't know, but as far as I'm concerned, I think they should have pulled back quite a bit.
Yeah.
On that.
All right. Anything else to say?
It's definitely an interesting film. I would recommend, as if you've listened to this, then you know already, but know what you're getting into. And if it sounds like you're interested, check it out. But if you're looking for a straight up Matrix 4, this isn't exactly that. It's.
I still would argue it kind
stuff,
of is.
Right?
It kind of is.
I really enjoyed that third act chase sequence.
Right.
Because what I like about it is, like, like we talked about, there is cool new stuff specifically about the world of the Matrix, right? Because this is a new version of the Matrix. They no longer have agents. They have swarm mode, which is really fucking cool. And I think they utilized really well. They have that new quote-unquote bullet time thing. So there is the real world, how everything's advanced with the robots and AI and all of that, how they interact. So yeah, if you're really into the lore and all that's going on with the Matrix, there is some good shit to see, I think. Mm-hmm. And it does work in some ways. Yeah. It's a unique film, I say.
Yeah. And as far as I don't know what the next movies we'll be talking about here. I imagine, hopefully, Licorice Pizza.
Hopefully, yeah.
Hopefully, and we'll bring you all the latest news coming out. As I mentioned, the next shows will be our favorite shows of 2021 with David, and then with Kyle and Peter, our top 10 movies of 2020. So thank you all for listening this year, and we'll see you back next time. Standard Spotlight. Bye bye.